Early in the morning, Baki began his training. He decided to run downhill, because running uphill wasn't interesting at all. Then Baki was ready to dash down at incredible speed. He moved his arms and legs even faster than free fall. The only way not to fall was to run as fast as possible. But then a yawn came over him again. Even though Baki had predicted it, he was still bored because nothing was exciting. Meanwhile, a match between two fighters was about to begin. Atlas was bored of being called the strongest regardless of weight class. 7 years had passed since he became the champion. He had won far too many fights. So when the match started, Atlas didn't even feel like fighting. His opponent rushed forward to attack. Atlas had already grown tired of this sport, because he didn't want to be the best. He wanted to be called the strongest. The referee stepped in and stopped the match. The victory belonged to Atlas very easily. During the post-fight interview, people didn't understand why Atlas had come to Japan. The simple reason was that someone here was acknowledged by everyone as the strongest. After that, he went to meet Tokugawa. He had watched the fight between Baki and Yujiro. That was the first time Atlas had seen the human body move so beautifully. Knowing that Tokugawa was supporting Hanma Baki, Tokugawa immediately understood that Atlas wanted to defeat him. Of course, Atlas had crossed the Pacific Ocean to confirm that himself. Tokugawa mentioned that the match would have no protective rules. Atlas naturally wanted to try a fight like that. In each match he earned 400 million Japanese yen. But for this match, he wouldn't take any money. Tokugawa asked about Atlas's current physical condition. Atlas confidently said he could fight tonight if necessary. Hearing that, Tokugawa immediately decided the fight would happen tonight. Atlas was a bit surprised because the schedule was so sudden. Tokugawa said that Baki was always free and ready anyway. Then a call to Baki was made immediately. The match was scheduled for tonight. Atlas was eager to see the strongest man walk out from the door. And then Baki appeared. Atlas couldn't believe the strongest man was just a kid. It was indeed the same face from the video. But Baki himself was much smaller. Only about half the size of Atlas. Looking at the scars on Baki's body, Atlas admitted he was clearly a seasoned warrior. Atlas felt like a monster was standing in front of him. He began to feel pressure from Baki. Only when the referee called did he snap out of his fear. The rules were announced once again. Just don't use weapons. Both fighters got into position. The crowd in the stands loudly chanted Atlas's name. This made Atlas feel very confident. He believed he could defeat Baki easily. He remembered his fight with Manny Pacquiao. Because the difference in weight is a wall that no legend can overcome. The match officially began. Atlas was confident he would handle Baki. But when he looked at him he felt Baki was bored. Atlas attacked first with a kick. Then he threw a powerful straight punch. But Baki easily dodged both attacks. Immediately after that, Baki grabbed Atlas. There was no way for Atlas to escape. And Baki spun him around like a top. The outcome was decided instantly. Baki even showed mercy to his opponent by holding back a yawn. Atlas admitted that Baki was truly a good person. The Prime Minister was taken somewhere by Tokugawa. Here, Hitoshi, the team leader, politely greeted the Prime Minister. Everything had already begun, and there was no turning back. The three of them started moving down to a point 366 meters underground. The Prime Minister didn't know what was happening. After moving for a while, they finally arrived. The Prime Minister couldn't believe there was a place like this under Skytree Tower. It was a massive secret base. And he wanted to know more about it. This was Tokugawa's creation. Here, he had created a human being. Then the Prime Minister was led to that place. A huge human figure was inside a large container. Tokugawa said the Prime Minister would also recognize him. A man from the distant region of Kumamoto. He was Miyamoto Musashi. And this was the project to awaken him. Dr. Honer was the one in charge of this project. They had successfully obtained soft tissue and protein from Musashi's bones. The Prime Minister objected because the international community strictly forbids human cloning. But at this point, everything was already close to completion. Years ago, Dr. Honer discovered something humanity had never imagined. He split open the fossils of dinosaurs. He firmly believed the most important part was hidden inside. And his prediction far exceeded expectations. Soft tissue and blood vessels were still preserved inside those fossils. He began analyzing them and discovered amino acids very similar to those of birds. Therefore, isolating genes and DNA was only a matter of time. He was confident that creating cloned dinosaurs would no longer be a distant dream. But when he announced the project, it was met with extremely fierce opposition. Later, someone came to meet Dr. Honer with a huge amount of money. The deal between the two sides was completed. And of course, it was Tokugawa who wanted him to take charge of his project. Tokugawa had stolen Musashi's remains from his grave. He was the most famous swordsman in Japanese history, a symbol of absolute strength. Dr. Honer was stunned when he arrived at Tokugawa's laboratory facility. The scale and level of technology were beyond Honer's imagination. Musashi's remains had already been prepared. The tower built above was merely a disguise. Its height was based on Musashi's name. Its slightly twisted shape symbolized the spiral structure of DNA. Dr. Honer was so excited that he didn't even require payment for the project. He was determined to bring Musashi back to the modern world, even if it meant defying God. Baki had just finished his daily training at home. Suddenly, he felt a massive rhythm. He didn't know whose it was. A very powerful heartbeat was echoing. Baki felt it was unlike anyone else. Unlike anyone he had ever known. Musashi's spinal cord was extracted, and it resembled that of a cat more than a human. Both Dr. Honer and Hitoshi were amazed by its shape. This was the skeleton of a samurai. Because of his intense training, it had deformed into that form. Dr. Honer separated a sample of the bone. Even without a microscope, the arteries were visible to the naked eye. Dr. Honer was extremely excited, while Baki kept training, because only movement could heal everything for him. But then another yawn came over him. Baki was still waiting for that mysterious sound. He was certain it would end his boredom. At the Shishikai dojo, Katsumi was exchanging martial arts techniques with Shibukawa. Both of them were delighted by each other's talent. Shibukawa admitted that his student was gradually reaching perfection. He was confident Katsumi could become his successor. After witnessing the fight between Baki and his father, Katsumi had been feeling uneasy. Now he wanted to increase the intensity of his training even more. Shibukawa said everyone felt the same way. Doppo had begun training underwater. Motobi had gone to the mountains to train. Shinogi was smashing punching bags every day. Kureha had even neglected his work to focus entirely on training. Jack was using more and more drugs. Retsu in America was probably training with great determination as well. Oliva was doing the hardest labor inside the prison. Only Hanayama had not changed at all. Katsumi asked his master how he felt. Shibukawa told him that after training in martial arts for a long time, strange abilities could appear, a kind of instinct that senses danger before it happens. Therefore, Shibukawa believed everyone was sensing the same thing. The experiment to revive Musashi was still in progress. A healthy unfertilized egg had been prepared. It would receive the donor's nucleus. And of course, the donor was Musashi himself. Hitoshi confirmed that after 28 days they would see the embryo of Miyamoto Musashi. Tokugawa was surprised that things were moving so quickly. Because this was the most advanced cloning laboratory in the world, Hitoshi insisted that nothing was impossible here. Then the implantation process began. The cloned embryo nucleus was inserted into the egg. The fertilization process was officially complete. Meanwhile, Baki continued fighting in arena matches. He was still searching for the one with that mysterious heartbeat. Baki easily won another fight. Tokugawa hoped Baki would wait just one more month. Surely his bored yawning would stop. Musashi had now reached 11 months and 10 days of development. Kureha kept training non-stop, but like Baki, he was also extremely bored. Doppo pushed himself hard training underwater. Yet he still felt bored. Jack also tried to make his body grow even bigger. Yet he kept yawning again and again without stopping. Musashi had now reached the age of 32 years and 6 months. All of his vital indicators were normal at this point. It was finally time for him to be born into the outside world. And just like that, he was brought out. This was the strongest swordsman in history. Musashi in flesh and blood. Tokugawa felt that the title, the strongest, was meant for this man. Hanayama was extremely bored at his bar. Even though someone had come to pick a fight the day before, he had only yawned and dealt with everything easily. After that, Hanayama went to see Tokugawa. He asked for permission to fight Yuhiro. But challenging Yuhiro could hardly even be called a match. Tokugawa didn't understand why Hanayama wanted that. He guessed Hanayama was extremely bored. Thinking back 2 years earlier, during their confrontation at the arcade in Tokyo, Hanayama had already received a psychological blow that would last a lifetime. So there was no reason for a rematch. Tokugawa felt very grateful toward Hanayama. At that moment, he also wanted to call Yujiro back to Japan, because the name Hanayama alone was enough to make an exciting fight happen. Meanwhile, all of Musashi's vital signs were still completely normal. But 81 hours had passed since his birth and he still hadn't awakened. All indicators were monitored 24 hours a day. Except for one thing. His brainwaves showed no response. The data looked perfect, but now it meant nothing. Dr. Honer asked everyone to help this helpless paleontologist. A fierce debate immediately broke out. Tokugawa was furious because everything had been perfected. Yet something crucial was still missing. He asked everyone to listen to his opinion. New data, old data, and accumulated data. He knew there were fields that scientists could not reach. He explained that his older sister worked as a spirit medium. In other words, she was a spiritualist. Everyone wondered why Tokugawa was asking for their help with this. He could tell that everyone was doubting the idea. Tokugawa admitted his sister sounded 100 times more suspicious than that. Tokugawa's sister was still giving spiritual readings to people. Many people lined up waiting for their turn. But after hearing her pleas, they couldn't stop laughing. Yet afterward, her words were convincing enough to make people believe. Next came a man who wanted to summon the spirit of his father who had died 2 years ago. She began her ritual and declared that his father was not dead. She even called out the man's name, Takashi. She continued to lecture him in the exact way a father scolds his son. And then Takashi became convinced that his father was still alive. Everyone around them was shocked that everything she said was correct. That evening, when Takashi returned home, his father explained that he had fainted at work at that exact time. During that moment, he had dreamed that he scolded his son. He had vented all his frustration about his son's lifestyle. Everything matched perfectly with what had happened earlier. Because of that, people believed there was no spirit that Sabuko could not summon. As for Hanayama, he finally met Yujiro right on the street. It was an honor that Yujiro personally came all the way there. Tokugawa was extremely excited that both men wanted to fight. He wanted them to start fighting right away without holding back. Meanwhile, Sabuko had arrived where Musashi was. She examined everything and admitted that many things were still missing. Most importantly, the soul was still absent. With this ritual object, the spirit would descend in about 5 minutes. A scientist stepped forward to speak with Honer. Because how could they possibly accept something like magic charms? Everything they were doing here was called science. Therefore, this was more insulting to science than anything else. He said that either he, Honer, or Sabuko had to leave this place. Sabuko then began chanting her spell. She summoned the spirit of one of the scientist's relatives. She even directly called out his name, Kenichi. Sabuko continued lecturing Kenichi. He still didn't believe it and thought she was putting on a show. But after listening to her talk for a moment, Kenichi realized she was using a phrase that his grandfather always said. The more Sabuko spoke, the more she revealed details from Kenichi's past. Because some things were known only to Kenichi and his grandfather. The image of his grandfather even appeared before him. This time, Kenichi no longer opposed it. He even advised Dr. Honer to give it a try. Meanwhile, the fight between Yujiro and Hanayama had not yet begun. The two decided to take a walk and talk for a bit. Ever since the fight with Baki, Yujiro had become famous all over the world. Now anyone could recognize him. After chatting for a while, Hanayama realized that he had finally stopped yawning. He told Yujiro that he had been extremely bored for the past year. Ever since watching the fight between Yujiro and his son, everything he heard or saw felt meaningless. Hanayama thought Yujiro was very humble for calling it just a normal family matter. Yujiro stated that the strength between him and his son was simply too great. So the people around them found it fascinating and spread the story on their own. Yujiro asked again what someone as bored as Hanayama really wanted to do. Hanayama apologized for being disrespectful. Clearly, the two of them had not met just to talk. As their fight was about to begin, someone came asking Yujiro for an autograph. With just one finger, Yujiro frightened the man instantly. Because he was currently busy with a fight. Hanayama and Yujiro continued walking and talking. The person asking for the autograph was still very happy. Soon, their conversation finally came to an end. They had reached a suitable place. Hanayama decided he would not hold back anymore. He launched the first attack on Yujiro. A straight punch aimed directly at Yuhiro's face. Yujiro took the punch head-on. But he only showed an incredibly terrifying smile. Watching them, Tokugawa felt the two had completely synchronized with each other. Hanayama attacked again. Yujiro had been standing still the whole time, simply dodging the blows. Strike after strike failed to hit the target. People watching had no idea what Hanayama was doing. Yujiro began mocking him. Hanayama threw another punch. This time Yujiro made it clear things would not be easy. Meanwhile, Sabuko began the spirit summoning ritual. She knew Musashi's childhood name was Takezo. If Takezo had lived peacefully without ever killing anyone, his face would have looked like this. She said his true face was extraordinary. Then she began her prayer. It was the same chant she always used. The scientists watched without daring to say a single word. Sabuko gradually synchronized with Musashi's spirit. Her posture and gaze began to resemble his. Tokugawa had just arrived as well. He told everyone to simply focus and watch. Sabuko continued the ritual. Tokugawa didn't want to watch too closely because he had seen this many times before. At that moment, the data and indicators still showed no changes. Suddenly, Sabuko kissed Musashi's body. Kenichi was furious and demanded to know what she was doing. Tokugawa ordered everyone to stay silent and not interfere. Until everything was finished, no one was allowed to stop her. Suddenly, Musashi's brainwaves began to move. Scars started appearing on his body. His face suddenly changed. His body began reacting violently. Sabuko's kiss finally ended. The moment Musashi woke up, he grabbed Sabuko. Then he threw her straight into the scientists. After that, he began questioning them. Musashi's soul and body had officially become one. He demanded honest answers from everyone. He promised he would not take anyone's life. The questioning continued for 2 full hours. Musashi eventually learned everything. Tokugawa wanted him to fight. He had already prepared suitable clothing for Musashi. Musashi put the clothes on. Then he asked who his opponent would be. Meanwhile, Baki was training at home and realized his yawning had stopped. He felt that strange heartbeat speeding up again. It had begun to move. Baki believed the day he would meet the owner of that heartbeat was near. Whether it was a death row inmate or a primitive man didn't matter. Whoever appeared would not surprise him anymore. Musashi was extremely excited to ride in a car. But he was also a bit frightened because he had not adapted to it yet. He had already learned that this was Japan 400 years after his era. Even though he knew things had changed, the shock hit him like an avalanche. Tokugawa then took him walking through the streets. Everything around him amazed him. Everything in his eyes was completely different from his time. The difference was truly enormous. He had many questions but didn't know where to begin. He could clearly feel the terrifying evolution of this world. It seemed he had descended into an extraordinary place. Musashi wanted to find a place where he truly belonged. Tokugawa had already prepared everything. Then Musashi was taken to Tokugawa's underground arena. When he arrived, Musashi felt at ease, because this was exactly the place he belonged. And then his first opponent appeared. His name was Sabu Kiyochiro. He was known as the unmatched swordsman of modern Japan. He greeted Tokugawa briefly because they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The moment Sabu saw Musashi, he reacted immediately. It felt as if he had just been cut in half. Tokugawa revealed that Sabu also had the nickname, Sabu the Butcher. Of course, he could not be compared to Musashi. Sabu had cut down more than 20 people. In Japan and even the world, no one had cut down more people than him. Sabu wondered who the man in front of him really was. Tokugawa promised he would explain everything after the fight. Suddenly, Sabu apologized because he could not keep his promise. He said he could not accept this duel. Even though he was old, he could not throw his life away. Tokugawa wondered what exactly Sabu had sensed. Sabu said that since earlier, he had already been cut 7 times by the man in front of him. Tokugawa did not understand what the two were talking about. The first cut was an X-shaped slash. A vertical strike from the top of the head down the body. The second was a thrust straight through the throat. The third was a diagonal slash. The fourth split the body horizontally. The fifth cut through the torso. The sixth sliced the entire body. And the seventh and final strike was across the chest. Musashi thanked him because his opponent had not resisted. So he accidentally went too far. Sabu thought it was ridiculous because he had used all his strength. Even if it was only in his mind, he had done everything he could. Only then did Tokugawa realize that the battle had already happened between them. The result was clearly 7-0. Tokugawa could not understand how Musashi had cut him without even having a sword. Sabu still wondered who the man before him truly was. For Musashi, having a real sword made no difference. He borrowed Sabu's sword. Musashi began testing the blade. He said it felt very nostalgic. Then he borrowed Sabu's second sword as well. Tokugawa wanted to see Musashi's swordsmanship. Of course, Sabu also wanted to see it. Musashi joked that since only the two of them were there, he had no one to demonstrate it on. But he was only joking. Musashi said Sabu's two swords were beautiful but not meant for cutting people. With just one swing, both swords shattered into pieces. Sabu had no idea what Musashi had just done. Musashi stated that these were not real swords. If they could not withstand a single swing, they could never cut anyone. Sabu demanded to know who the man before him was. In over 60 years of life, he had never heard of a sword breaking just from being swung. Musashi introduced himself and said it was an honor to meet Sabu. At that moment, Sabu understood everything. Musashi declared that with any weapon or even bare hands, he would defeat the strong. Musashi decided he would defeat the strongest person in this country. Hearing this, Tokugawa trembled uncontrollably. The next day, Tokugawa told Baki about the fight between the strongest creature on earth and Japan's #1 fighter. Baki listened with great excitement. He admitted Hanayama was truly amazing, because he understood very well what kind of person his father was. Baki wanted to hear the details of the fight. The fight happened exactly as described. At that moment, Yujiro countered Hanayama's punch with a straight punch to the face. Then Hanayama was thrown straight into a nearby bookstore. Even though it was a small place, he was safe and not seriously injured. Hanayama was even smiling brightly. Baki asked Tokugawa who the person in the next room was. The room right beside them. Baki wanted to know exactly who that person was. Tokugawa said there were many people working here, so someone in the next room was normal. Baki felt Tokugawa was underestimating him. After all, he was Yuhiro's son. He could clearly sense what kind of person was in that room. Then Baki joked that he actually felt nothing. After all, this wasn't a historical fantasy movie. Suddenly, someone appeared behind him. Baki immediately attacked. For a moment, he felt as if his leg had been cut off. But when he looked again, it was still intact. Musashi finally revealed himself. In that instant, the two of them saw strange visions. One saw a banquet stretching to the horizon. The other saw a massive fist-shaped cloud. Musashi praised Baki for his reaction. Tokugawa asked Baki to describe what he felt about the man in front of him. Baki said he was about to say something crazy. He said the man in front of him was Musashi, a samurai from the Warring States era revived in the 21st century. Tokugawa was shocked that Baki already knew. Baki admitted he didn't know how it happened, but the reality in front of him could not be denied. Seeing Tokugawa's reaction confirmed he was right. Musashi asked Baki to step outside. He wanted them to fight right there. The two would fight barehanded. Baki said it obviously had to be bare hands. As soon as he finished speaking, Musashi summoned an invisible sword. Baki could see that sword. Musashi declared that he was the unrivaled warrior under heaven. Baki admitted that Musashi was truly terrifying. Musashi said that when someone reached his level, his own body became the blade. He asked Baki whether fighting barehanded like this would be fine. Baki did not expect such a kind of power to exist. He accepted the challenge to fight Musashi. Tokugawa felt it would be a waste if the two fought right there. Baki said he was ready since Musashi was the one who invited him outside. Musashi asked about Baki's identity. Tokugawa then asked Musashi what he thought about Baki. Musashi looked him over and said he was decent. As soon as he finished speaking, Baki attacked first, but Musashi immediately grabbed his leg. He guessed Baki came from Ryukyu, because fighters from there often used many kicking techniques. Baki attacked again but still failed. Musashi said he might have to teach Baki a lesson. Since this was a fight, he wondered if Baki could handle it. With one throw, Musashi slammed Baki straight to the ground. Baki immediately lost consciousness. Musashi commented that he was only slightly better than a normal sword. After a while, Baki finally woke up. He realized that he had lost. After sitting and thinking for a long time, Baki realized something. He had just fought a legendary swordsman from history. Baki admitted the whole situation was insane. He truly wanted to meet Musashi again. Baki immediately went outside. Tokugawa asked Baki if he wanted to watch Musashi train. Musashi began swinging bamboo sticks. His grip was strange, holding each stick with just one finger. With a single swing, the bamboo shattered into many pieces. One after another, the bamboo sticks were crushed. Baki wondered what the point of this training was. Musashi said he had never really thought about it. Training was simply natural for a swordsman. Baki said the simple goal was to win. Baki believed fighting him would be better than training. Musashi said Baki had already died, because Baki had been unconscious for about 30 minutes. Musashi said he could have killed him many times during that time. Baki felt embarrassed about asking for a rematch. Musashi asked if Baki wanted to try swinging the bamboo. He wanted to see it. Baki suddenly kicked and snapped the bamboo in half. Musashi praised him and said that was well done. Cutting something clean in half was not easy. Musashi admitted Baki had become much faster than before. Tokugawa once again declared that Baki was the strongest young man in the world. But to Musashi, that still did not make him a true warrior. Musashi said he wanted to go outside again. He wanted to see more of the outside world. Tokugawa worried that letting him go alone would definitely cause trouble. Baki also said Musashi could not just go outside. Even though Musashi could have killed him many times, he could not deliver the finishing blow. Baki suddenly launched a lightning-fast attack. The speed was even faster than light. In the past, Baki's father had taught him this technique. Anyone would be hit by this move. The technique was called the Ultimate Super-Level Galaxy Phantom Strike. It was simply a jab. Yuhiro once demonstrated the move in front of Baki. Yuhiro threw a strike right in front of Baki. He said it would break straight through head-on without any conditions. Only speed is the core. Yuhiro wanted Baki to perform it again. Engrave it deeply again and again. The jab would be the fastest technique in modern martial arts. Musashi took Baki's jab head-on. As a result, he also collapsed to the ground. This strike surprised him quite a bit. Baki stated that 10 seconds had already passed. He couldn't do it many times, but he could at least kill him about 3 times. Musashi also admitted that he had been killed. He himself had died the moment Baki rushed in. Baki didn't expect that he had already read his technique. Musashi admitted that Baki's aura was very strong. Baki realized that Musashi could dodge that jab. But for Musashi, if he couldn't defend against it, he would no longer be a warrior. He wanted to know the effectiveness of it. Baki had struck his jaw rather than hitting his face head-on. His mind began to spin. His body fell into a fatal state. He considered himself truly careless for losing control of himself. Baki considered this matter no joke. Musashi introduced himself once again. Of course, Baki introduced himself in return. Musashi decided he would no longer hold back against Baki. This time he used 2 swords to unleash the Knight in Ichi Ryu style. Baki wasn't afraid and charged forward to attack. He thought that not continuing the fight would be disrespectful. Musashi had realized everything. The signals from his opponent's brain that even the opponent didn't know. He successfully responded in time to Baki's speed attack. Baki had officially been read like a book. He was also slashed through the body by Musashi. Suffering intense pain, Baki frantically counterattacked Musashi. He knocked Musashi high into the air. Musashi still praised Baki for doing very well, not expecting him to counter from that diagonal slash. Baki had exceeded his expectations. Baki collapsed unconscious again, while Musashi escaped outside. He went out into the streets to learn about modern human civilization. He was watching an advertisement on a giant screen, surprised that the large picture could move. Everything was strange and full of surprises to Musashi. He admitted it was terrifying. The gap between the 2 eras was enormous. In 400 years, humanity had developed tremendously. Everything was created by human hands. Musashi continued strolling through the streets when two police officers suddenly approached him to ask questions. Of course, Musashi had no idea what police were. The officers asked where Musashi's shoes were. He said it was due to his own carelessness. Then the officers asked for his name and address. Musashi introduced his name and his address from the 12th year of the Tensho era. The two officers thought he was on drugs. They then tried to check Musashi immediately. Without saying much, he knocked both of them unconscious instantly. Baki returned and was still frustrated about the previous battle. He still couldn't believe he had just fought a legendary samurai. Through that battle, Baki truly understood how powerful Musashi was. Baki was very impressed by Musashi's ability to quickly predict others' actions. Because in Musashi's era, one small mistake could cost you your life. The strongest warrior of that era had descended into this era. Baki admitted that it was truly fortunate. Pickle was a miracle from the primitive past. And now they had the strongest warrior from the Warring States era. Baki understood why this was happening. Because this was the era that would decide who would be the strongest in human history. Two other police officers came to restrain Musashi. He knocked both of them unconscious instantly as well. Meanwhile, Baki was still extremely excited. Because at this moment, the essence of martial arts was flowing through Musashi's body. Baki was determined to catch up to him. So he had to adjust his fighting style. Returning home, he began training to create his own unique fighting style. Baki frantically plunged into thought and searched for new techniques. Baki once again imagined the image of Musashi. Knowing clearly that he couldn't defeat him right now. The police were gathering forces to capture Musashi at all costs. News about the mysterious man who had defeated many police officers had already spread widely. Wherever he went, police officers were lying unconscious everywhere. The media reported that the man called himself the legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. Many great martial artists reacted strongly to the news. Everyone sensed that Musashi was extremely powerful. They all hoped to fight him one day. Musashi was now considered a criminal and was heavily monitored. Two undercover officers approached him again. Of course, Musashi immediately noticed them, but he suddenly jumped into a mansion. The officers realized it was Tokugawa's residence. The police believed this could become a huge problem. They reported the situation to Tokugawa. Musashi was now considered a suspect in an emergency operation. He was classified as a dangerous individual. Tokugawa contacted Police Director Utsumi. He told them to leave Musashi alone and not interfere. This was Tokugawa's direct order. Mishiro promised to deliver the order completely. Doppo also arrived at the mansion. Of course, he came to ask about the man rumored to be the strongest. He learned that Musashi was completely different from any martial arts he knew. Because Musashi used the sword, Doppo was extremely excited and wanted to meet him. As soon as he finished speaking, Musashi appeared. Musashi said he was very hungry. He apologized to Doppo for the rudeness. Tokugawa asked Musashi what he thought of Doppo. Musashi said if it was this man, a duel before dinner would be fine. Tokugawa was surprised that Musashi treated the martial god Doppo so casually. Doppo was very happy and willing to fight Musashi in any form. Everything seemed as if it had already been arranged. Musashi suddenly said he had been restrained. Since entering the room, he had tried to draw his sword 3 times. But each time his head was suppressed. Tokugawa suggested fighting after dinner might be better. Musashi said it was unnecessary. The two of them then moved to a dojo used by servants for practice. Tokugawa wanted to properly introduce Doppo to Musashi. He had already prepared tools to make the explanation easier. Doppo also knew what he needed to do. Then Doppo began to demonstrate his techniques. One by one, he performed feats such as chopping bricks, kicking wooden posts, and smashing glass bottles. Musashi saw these demonstrations as mere dancing rather than real martial arts. Those words sounded like a direct challenge to Doppo. The two of them prepared to fight each other. As Doppo tried to attack with a headbutt, Musashi immediately read the move and toyed with him. Musashi apologized for provoking Doppo with his earlier words. He admitted that Doppo's skills were extremely sharp and could finish an opponent in an instant. Doppo felt embarrassed that his sudden headbutt had been predicted. But touching that bald head came with a price. And both men understood each other's intent. Musashi summoned 2 invisible swords again. Doppo could see them and tried to dodge because he knew he was being threatened by the range of a sword that did not exist. Musashi rushed forward and stabbed straight at Doppo. Doppo managed to evade that thrust, but he could not avoid the second invisible sword. As a result, he took the slash directly. Musashi laughed and said Doppo had only been dancing. He then threw a straight punch toward his opponent's face. Doppo struggled to keep himself from falling to the floor. Then he finally became serious with his martial arts stance. Musashi remained calm and continued observing his opponent. He asked Doppo if he realized he had already been cut. Of course, Doppo clearly felt it, but to Doppo, it was only an imaginary slash. He said Musashi's biggest mistake was standing here without a real sword. Musashi agreed that perhaps he needed a real sword to satisfy Doppo. Tokugawa immediately brought out the national treasure Kunitora. It was a treasured family sword. Musashi examined the blade carefully. He admitted it was a fine sword. Then he asked Doppo to wait for a moment. Tokugawa confirmed to Doppo that this man was the real Musashi and not an imposter. Doppo said that did not matter to him. He believed Musashi was real, which was why he allowed him to hold the sword. Tokugawa became worried because this was a real sword, not a wooden stick. Doppo showed no fear, because in karate the entire body is a weapon. Musashi found that statement amusing. He continued throwing insulting remarks toward Doppo. As soon as he finished speaking, the battle between them began instantly. Doppo took Musashi's strike directly. Fortunately, Musashi did not actually slash. He explained that he had only touched Doppo and pressed the blade down. That was how he had handled him. Musashi then picked up a piece of wood and cut it in half. He said that was what a real slash looked like. Suddenly, blood began flowing from Musashi's face. He realized he needed to reflect on himself. It was because he had dared to underestimate Doppo. Now he admitted that Doppo's limbs were like a net of razor-sharp blades. Doppo remained silent and said nothing. He knew he had already lost. After that, Doppo learned the full truth about Musashi. In their battle, Doppo had lost in every aspect. It was a complete defeat, yet strangely satisfying. Doppo had been defeated by Japan's unmatched and perfectly sharp sword. Musashi had won without leaving a single wound. That kind of mercy made Doppo feel uncomfortable. To him, it hurt even more than being slashed. Doppo thanked Tokugawa once again, even though he had read the martial texts and memorized them. In that moment he realized he had understood nothing. Tokugawa asked Doppo about his future plans. Doppo decided he would go into seclusion for a while. After Retsu defeated the boxing champion Bolt, he received the championship belt from Kaiser. At that moment, whether people recognized it or not no longer mattered to Retsu. From that point on, boxer Retsu officially ended his career. There would be no title defense or anything like that. He decided to return to Japan. He wanted to fight a worthy opponent with his Chinese kung fu. Later, Retsu heard about Doppo's defeat. He could not believe that a master like Doppo had lost so badly. Katsumi said Doppo had accepted the defeat wholeheartedly without any resentment. Katsumi himself also wanted to fight Musashi. Retsu asked what kind of weapon the opponent used. Katsumi found it surprising that a karate and Chinese kung fu master would fear an opponent. Retsu also watched the video of Musashi easily defeating the police officers. Therefore, Retsu advised Katsumi that if he truly wanted to fight Musashi, he should not hesitate to use a weapon. Musashi began using a lighter. He found this small tool incredibly fascinating. After that, he mixed straw charcoal with horse fat. He used that mixture to apply ointment to the wound on his face. Tokugawa came to see him again. Musashi was then brought to the underground arena to meet Retsu. Tokugawa explained that the rules of this arena allowed the use of weapons. Musashi realized that Retsu himself had requested that rule. Retsu said he did it for Musashi's sake. He knew that even without a sword, Musashi was still a powerful opponent. But Musashi was an unmatched swordsman. So for someone who practiced kung fu like Retsu, winning without swords would be meaningless. Musashi was surprised that Retsu even believed he could win in hand-to-hand combat. Of course, Retsu had his doubts about that as well. But the key point of the match lay there. Defeating Musashi would only have meaning if swords were involved. Musashi began releasing a terrifying killing intent. Retsu immediately launched his attack. because Retsu's leg was prosthetic. Musashi managed to break it. But then Musashi took a full kick directly to the face. Musashi collapsed onto the arena floor. Tokugawa could not understand why Retsu had attacked first. Retsu explained that he sensed a brutal killing intent and had no choice but to strike. He was also grateful for his prosthetic leg that helped him. Retsu then left and scheduled a rematch 3 days later. Musashi admitted that Retsu was a likable person. Later, Motobi came to see Tokugawa. He said he did not need any explanation because he already knew everything was true. Motobi also knew that Retsu and Musashi were preparing to fight each other. He believed that this match was truly worth watching, because he clearly understood what kind of fighter Retsu was, and what kind of opponent Musashi was. Tokugawa guessed that Motobi probably wanted to fight as well. Motobi replied that he did want to. But not exactly to fight, he wanted to protect someone. Tokugawa asked who he wanted to protect. Motobi knew Musashi was praised as a master swordsman. But that did not mean he only knew how to use a sword. Samurai of that era were far from weak. Musashi could use many different kinds of weapons. On top of that, he was skilled in many forms of martial arts. Motobi said he himself was somewhat similar. Even Yujiro could not master so many different things. Therefore, aside from him, no one else could protect their allies from Musashi. Meanwhile, Retsu returned to his training. He began practicing with various weapons combined together. Kaku admitted that Retsu's weapon skills had become much sharper than before. After that, Retsu continued training his martial arts. Retsu successfully mastered Shaori, turning himself into a thick wall capable of deflecting ordinary attacks. At the same time, Retsu's body became as light as a feather. Everything in Retsu's body became flexible and delicate. His entire body felt as thin and light as paper. Finally, he reached the state of being as light as a feather. When reaching that feather state, the wall-like defense would disappear. That was the most perfect form of Shaori. Even if an opponent used a sword, it would not be able to harm him. After that, Kaku continued teaching Chinese sword techniques to his students. While teaching, he clearly explained the core principles of traditional Chinese martial arts passed down through generations. Eventually, Retsu began sparring with Kaku. Kaku wanted Retsu to flow naturally with the movement of the sword. If he could do that, even Musashi would not be able to cut him. Meanwhile, Musashi also began training. He practiced by slashing leaves that were falling from the wind. With just 2 slashes, a leaf was cut into 4 pieces. Retsu's training progressed extremely well. He successfully avoided being cut by Kaku. Kaku praised him, saying that by the 4th attempt he had already become as light as a feather. Everything was now ready for the final battle. Kaku acknowledged Retsu once again. Suddenly Motobi arrived. He mocked them, saying these childish tricks could never stand against Musashi. He said it was truly laughable. Meanwhile, Musashi easily sliced a feather in half. Tokugawa was shocked that Musashi could draw such a long and heavy sword so easily. It was so fast that the human eye could barely see it. Musashi explained that a sword must be drawn from the hips. The slash also came from the hips in one decisive motion. Meanwhile, Kaku disagreed with Motobi's opinion. Motobi said that was understandable because Kaku was Chinese and did not understand the Warring States era of Japan. In that era, when 2 men faced each other, one of them had to die. That was completely different from modern martial arts. Even if it was rough and imperfect, fighting still had to follow the traditional way. Retsu understood this and asked Motobi to guide him. However, Motobi told Retsu to withdraw from the fight, because even unarmed fighters could not defeat Musashi, let alone when he was holding a sword. Retsu refused to accept the humiliation. Motobi stated that Musashi could cut through anything, so if Retsu couldn't even get past him, he shouldn't think about going any further. Retsu understood that he had to defeat Motobi first if he wanted to continue. The 2 of them immediately launched their attacks. Motobi locked Retsu's arm with his neck, but Retsu managed to break free. Only then did Retsu realize his elbow had almost been completely crushed. Motobi said he couldn't afford to hold back, because that would still be better than being cut down. Retsu continued to attack aggressively. Motobi took the hit but instantly counterattacked. However, Retsu successfully neutralized all of his opponent's techniques. Watching from the side, Katsumi admitted that both fighters were on an entirely different level. Motobi stood up, ready to do something, but before he could act, Kaku knocked him unconscious. Kaku didn't want his student to be injured before the night of battle. He told Retsu to go and rest. Then a new day began. The underground arena beneath Tokyo Dome once again fell into chaos. Today was completely different from previous fights. Everyone had come here to witness a legendary battle. Retsu mentally prepared himself to step into the arena. Baki also came to support Retsu. Baki understood that today's match perfectly suited Retsu's style. He admitted that it was very fair. Since the opponent was a samurai, using weapons made the fight truly fair. Baki even felt a little jealous about it. Soon it was time for the match. Both Retsu and Musashi were ready. The two prepared themselves for a battle to the death. The crowd erupted in cheers when the real Musashi stepped into the arena. Everyone admitted he looked incredibly cool. Retsu also made his entrance. The two faced each other once again. In the center of the arena, many weapons had already been prepared. Because this match followed special rules, all weapons were allowed. The only thing forbidden was firearms. Both fighters returned to their positions. Then the life and death battle officially began with the sound of the drum. The entire audience fell silent in intense focus. Because the upcoming battle was not simply about winning or losing. Musashi wanted to finish this fight quickly and cleanly. Retsu removed his shirt, revealing countless throwing knives hidden underneath. He immediately grabbed one and threw it straight at Musashi. Musashi easily dodged it, even though the speed was fast. Musashi still read the attack perfectly. Retsu kept throwing knives one after another. But Musashi avoided and countered every single one. Then came another wave of knives. Musashi handled them all effortlessly. When the final knife arrived, he sliced it clean in half with his sword. The opening of this life or death battle left the spectators completely stunned. Everyone could only gasp in disbelief. Because the legendary unmatched swordsman Musashi was truly standing before them. Retsu had run out of throwing knives. He immediately removed his shirt completely. Then he used the shirt itself as a weapon. This time he slammed the shirt onto the ground, launching sand and debris toward Musashi. Waves of sand blasted toward him again and again. Musashi stood still and endured the attack. Even when sand struck his eyes, he showed no openings at all. He commented that Retsu was acting like a child, first throwing knives, then throwing sand and gravel. He mocked Retsu for not daring to close the distance and fight. Musashi continued provoking him. This time Retsu threw the shirt directly at Musashi. Musashi wondered what trick Retsu was planning. He assumed there was no strategy left. The moment he sliced the shirt in half, Musashi was struck by Retsu's attack. Retsu was thrilled that he had finally landed a hit. Musashi collapsed completely. However, he stood up immediately even though blood was running down his face. Retsu continued attacking with a 9-section whip. All this time he had maintained a safe distance from Musashi. Musashi carefully analyzed his opponent's technique. Then he suddenly laughed. After that, he unexpectedly dropped his sword. Retsu immediately continued his attack. But this time it wasn't so easy anymore. Musashi effortlessly dodged the strike. Then he grabbed both ends of Retsu's weapon. He successfully seized it for himself. Musashi began testing the weapon by swinging it. He admitted that while it could swing, it wasn't strong enough to take a life. The steel quality was also far too weak. He couldn't believe Retsu intended to defeat him with such a toy. Retsu didn't understand why he couldn't move forward to attack anymore. Even though many opportunities appeared, he couldn't control his own body. Musashi called out to Retsu. He said he would show him how the 9-section whip should really be used. Musashi released a terrifying killing intent. Baki realized Musashi was about to repeat the same move again. Then a powerful swing instantly snapped the weapon apart. Everyone watching could only cry out in disbelief. Kaku was extremely furious, because the weapon he had trained with in his youth was broken so easily with just a single swing. Musashi threw his sword to Retsu and wanted him to draw it and swing it. Since Retsu wanted to fight a samurai, he should at least use a sword. Surprisingly, Retsu used the sword and struck Musashi several times, delivering continuous blows to Musashi's body. Once again, Musashi collapsed onto the arena floor. Retsu admitted that Musashi was as cowardly as the rumors said. Meanwhile, Retsu considered himself a true martial artist. Retsu promised he would not let Musashi get close while he was unarmed. The spectators wanted Retsu to finish Musashi immediately. Musashi insisted that the moment he fell was Retsu's only chance to win. He said it would never happen a second time, and declared that Retsu had already lost. The crowd laughed because Musashi's trick had already been exposed. In history, he had once said the same thing to an opponent, and in that battle, Musashi eventually won. Musashi was surprised that his words had been passed down through generations. Retsu said that the quote had become very famous. Suddenly, Musashi threw the sword toward the pile of weapons in the center of the arena. Then he rushed straight toward Retsu. This time, he wanted to fight Retsu with his bare hands. Retsu reacted immediately. He even used his hair to strike directly at Musashi's eyes. Retsu was determined not to let Musashi get close to him. Suddenly, Musashi grabbed Retsu's prosthetic leg once again. He admitted that the punch to his jaw earlier had been impressive. Retsu could not believe that someone could lift his 100-kilogram body with just one hand. Musashi praised Retsu for turning his hair into a weapon, especially since he could attack at such a close distance. Retsu continued attacking but failed. Musashi grabbed Retsu and swung his entire body like he was swinging a sword. He slammed Retsu painfully onto the arena floor. But surprisingly, Retsu was still able to stand after that attack. Perhaps this was the last bit of pride of Chinese martial arts. Because the outcome had already been decided after Musashi's strike. Retsu had already been defeated. Musashi walked forward while Retsu stood there frozen. Once again, Retsu was struck and snapped back to his senses. He reacted immediately and prepared to continue the fight. He attacked aggressively again, but every punch was predicted by Musashi. Retsu kept attacking with both kicks and punches. However, Musashi read every move, and Retsu's elbow was dislocated. Kaku silently hoped that his student would survive and return. Musashi suddenly picked up a sword. He still considered these weapons nothing more than toys. With just one swing, the blade shattered. He tried another weapon and still said it was only good for kitchen use. Suddenly, Retsu took Baki's fighting stance. Everyone immediately recognized that posture. It was Baki's combat stance. Baki could not believe that Retsu had learned that stance from him. He had no idea what Retsu was planning to do. Musashi walked toward Retsu. At this point, one of Retsu's arms and one of his legs could no longer be used. Musashi released an extremely fierce killing intent. Retsu showed no fear at all. He was ready to receive Musashi's attack, even if it meant being cut in half. Retsu stood still and waited for Musashi to strike. He became furious when Musashi did not draw his sword and attack. He believed Musashi was insulting him. Musashi admitted that Retsu was a true warrior. Retsu suddenly flipped his body and kicked Musashi straight in the face. Everyone admitted that Retsu was truly a genius, because he had managed to knock Musashi down once again. Retsu silently thanked Baki for that fighting stance. The spectators realized that Musashi could not stand up anymore. Everyone wanted Retsu to finish his opponent. Retsu was ready. He launched the final decisive attack. But Musashi would not allow the battle to end like that. All this time, he had only been pretending to be defeated. Musashi suddenly strangled Retsu with a bandage. Then he bound Retsu's arms and legs the same way. Musashi said this was his binding technique. The audience believed Musashi was fighting dirty. Musashi had openly ambushed his opponent, but he claimed it was a legitimate counterattack that exploited Retsu's opening. Kaku realized that everything was already over. Retsu had not been knocked out or cut down. He could still move slightly, but all of his movements had been sealed. For someone who lived for martial arts, this was an outcome that should never happen. It was a defeat even worse than losing. Retsu asked Musashi to cut him down. Musashi did not want Retsu to be so arrogant, because now Retsu did not even have the right to be cut down by someone else. Tears began to fall from Retsu's eyes. Musashi admitted that he had taken quite a beating today. He walked over and picked up his sword. Then he came to Retsu and swung it. The blade next to him was cut cleanly in half. Out of respect, Musashi decided that he would cut Retsu down. The audience could only watch as Musashi became truly serious. And then he delivered the final slash. The bandages wrapped around Retsu's body were completely removed. Retsu immediately counterattacked, but it seemed everything was already too late. Musashi delivered a direct slash toward Retsu. At that moment, Retsu suddenly used the technique of dissipating force. He tried to counterattack, but once again his prosthetic leg was cut off. Retsu immediately retreated backward. Kaku could not believe that the force dissipation technique had been broken. Retsu had taken the full power of Musashi's slash. Luckily, because he used the force dissipation technique, the cut was shallow and saved his life. Retsu still wanted to continue and demanded another strike. He once again stood in a stance that fully revealed his intention. Musashi realized it could no longer even be called a defensive stance. Retsu rushed forward to attack again. Musashi swung his blade, but this time it was blocked by Retsu's punch. Everyone was shocked by this. Even Musashi himself was surprised that Retsu had reached that level. Retsu was extremely excited that he had stopped his opponent's slash. Musashi admitted that Retsu had truly grasped it. In an era without swords, a fist itself could become a sword. This time things were different. Musashi then finished the battle. Retsu received a very deep slash. He finally collapsed. At that moment, he understood what it truly felt like to be cut. Retsu fell to the arena floor. In that instant, he realized his body had been severed apart. He knew that counter-attacking was now impossible. Even standing up was far beyond reach. Retsu's internal organs spilled out of his body. The life and death battle had truly ended. Musashi was officially the winner. The entire arena once again fell into a strange silence. Everyone felt deeply ashamed. Even though they had witnessed a life and death battle, they felt ashamed of themselves. The winner is usually praised and celebrated with many compliments. But for Musashi, nothing like that happened. He simply stood there, still the unmatched warrior under heaven. Retsu's body was later properly wrapped and bandaged. Everyone felt sorrow for Retsu. Tokugawa asked everyone whether he had made a mistake. Kaku said that this battle was Retsu's wish, so there was nothing wrong with it. Everyone mourned for Retsu. Everyone felt deeply saddened by Retsu's passing. After the battle, Tokugawa and Musashi stayed behind to talk together. As expected, it had been an easy match for Musashi. Musashi looked at his injured face and questioned how Tokugawa could call it easy. Tokugawa said he had something he wanted to ask. He wanted to know Musashi's opinion of Retsu. Musashi thought for a moment and said it felt like facing Sekigahara. In that battle in the past, Musashi had killed many enemies by himself. The enemy troops kept coming in greater numbers. Yet he feared none of them. For Musashi, the battle at Sekigahara had been truly fascinating. Tokugawa understood this to mean that Retsu had indeed been a very formidable opponent. Musashi admitted that he had grown fond of him, because Retsu was able to block his slash with a bare fist. Musashi admired that kind of training, the leaps in thinking, and Retsu's tenacity. At the same time, he also feared Retsu. Tokugawa thanked Musashi because those words would comfort Retsu's soul. Tokugawa then asked Musashi to compare the genius swordsman Sasaki with Retsu. Which opponent had been stronger? Tokugawa felt proud that Musashi was seriously comparing the two. He wondered what the answer would be between a master of fists and a master of swords. Unexpectedly, Musashi answered, Funashima Island. He assumed Tokugawa was referring to Sasaki, whom he fought on Funashima Island. Musashi tried to recall that battle. Seeing his reaction, Tokugawa wondered if Sasaki had not been Musashi's strongest opponent. Musashi said Sasaki had only been ordinary. Tokugawa was quite shocked by that. Musashi insisted that Sasaki was nothing special. Tokugawa then asked how Retsu compared. Musashi said if strength were like a great war, how could Retsu possibly be considered ordinary? The three opponents he had fought were all far from ordinary. In the Warring States era, all three would have been famous warriors. Tokugawa was surprised that Musashi said they were only worthy of being remembered. Musashi continued waiting for the next battle. Baki suddenly went to Motobi to learn ancient martial arts. Motobi refused Baki's request. Motobi was disappointed that he had failed to protect Retsu. Because of that, he believed Baki would not be able to do anything either. He wanted to protect everyone from Musashi's demonic power. Baki said he did not need Motobi to protect anyone. The two began arguing and could not reach an understanding. Baki insisted that he did not need anyone to protect him. Motobi reminded him about the recent battle. Retsu's death was a tragic loss for everyone. But as a martial artist, Motobi felt honored to have witnessed the ultimate destination of the path he pursued. He felt a little regretful because no one had yet seen Musashi fight with his full power. Motobi guessed that Musashi wanted to experience as many things as possible. Although Retsu was very strong, he was not the kind of opponent who could make Musashi careless and lose. Therefore, Motobi now believed it was his duty to protect everyone. Baki did not accept this. The two had no choice but to fight each other to settle the matter. Baki rushed in and attacked first. As a result, Motobi disappeared right in front of him. He had already pulled out a dagger and threatened Baki from behind. Baki did not expect that Motobi had even prepared a smoke bomb beforehand. After receiving Baki's message in the morning, Motobi had already predicted things would turn out like this. Motobi then introduced Baki to the ninja smoke bomb. He said this was military strategy. This was real combat. Musashi's fighting style also included things like this. Baki realized that in a real fight, he would have already been killed. Motobi explained everything so Baki could understand. He wanted Baki to get used to unexpected situations like this. Motobi claimed that he alone had mastered this style of combat. Therefore, he said this battle was his responsibility. Meanwhile, Musashi was suddenly arrested by the police. Tokugawa did not understand what was happening. Utsumi explained that there was an arrest warrant because Musashi was suspected of murder. There were many witnesses. At the police headquarters, many people testified that Musashi had killed numerous individuals with a sword. Utsumi asked Tokugawa to let him handle the matter. He promised that Musashi would not be treated unfairly. Musashi easily removed the handcuffs. He also promised that he would return soon. Outside, a large number of police officers had gathered. Musashi was surprised to see so many people there. Utsumi ordered everyone to step back. But Musashi did not want that. With a force like this, there was no way they could restrain him anyway. He wanted them all to focus. But when he looked again, he saw them as nothing more than a group of useless fighters. Musashi was then escorted away together with police chief Utsumi. Miwa Takeo was the chief inspector and also a skilled swordsman. He had heard about Musashi and naturally wanted to meet him in person. Soon after, Musashi was brought there. Miwa and Musashi then had a chance to test their skills. The two would fight using bamboo swords. Miwa felt as if a monster was standing right in front of him. Musashi stepped forward toward Miwa. Without saying a word, he immediately swung his wooden sword. Miwa took the full force of the attack. Just like that, he was completely defeated. Everyone watching could only stare in shock. Musashi asked if he was allowed to go home now, because he and Utsumi had made an agreement beforehand. Suddenly, Shibukawa appeared. Musashi admitted that it had been a long time since he had seen someone like him. He saw a man whose center of balance ran straight and solid through his entire body. Shibukawa was then introduced to Musashi. He was also very happy to meet him. Both of them were masters of Japan. Utsumi wondered which of them was stronger. Shibukawa did not want to be compared to Musashi. For him, simply meeting Musashi was already a great honor. He asked to shake hands with Musashi. Musashi accepted the handshake. Suddenly, he realized that he could not pull his hand away. Musashi thought this was some kind of sorcery. Even though he tried to let go, he could not. Shibukawa declared that Musashi was already within his control. Musashi felt an extremely heavy pressure. He then collapsed onto the floor. Shibukawa mentioned Retsu's battle. He said that Retsu was his friend. Right after saying that, he punched Musashi straight in the face. Shibukawa said Musashi deserved it. Musashi stood up again. Shibukawa stated that he would not apologize. He also said this was not revenge, because Retsu would not have wanted that. He admitted he acted purely based on personal emotions. He attacked because he hated Musashi. Musashi accepted that and admitted Shibukawa's technique was impressive. They had only shaken hands evenly. Yet Musashi had been completely controlled. The pressure felt like a massive rock crushing his body. Shibukawa explained that when a warrior loses his sword in battle, he must rely on hand-to-hand grappling techniques. He continued explaining the history behind that technique, which people call Eki. Shibukawa then introduced his own name formally. He turned to speak with Utsumi and said that things had probably begun. At that exact moment, Musashi moved first. Shibukawa realized he had already been cut. He admitted that surprise attacks were truly Musashi's specialty. A true legendary trickster. A legendary samurai who had been transported to the future. Musashi released a killing intent like a volcano erupting in front of Shibukawa. He summoned both his long sword and short sword. Then he immediately rushed forward to attack Shibukawa. Shibukawa realized he had been cut again. Soon after, the intense pain caused him to collapse and lose consciousness. He only woke up when someone called out to him, just as Shibukawa had predicted. Indeed, Musashi is truly a master swordsman. Every movement he makes has not the slightest opening. Shibukawa comes forward to shake his hand and admits that he has completely lost. The two shake hands again. Shibukawa's body is covered in cuts. And Motobi then goes to find Yuhiro. The two of them drink sake and chat together. Of course, Yuhiro is very excited, because he already knows that Musashi has been causing a huge stir out there. Naturally, he also really wants to meet Musashi. Motobi advises Yuhiro not to do that, because Musashi is not an opponent Yuhiro can deal with easily. Yuhiro says that this summer's heat isn't even strong enough to drive someone crazy. He asks Motobi who could possibly handle Musashi, and Motobi gives the same answer as before. He promises he will protect everyone. This answer drives Yuhiro furious. Just as Yuhiro is about to rush in and attack Motobi, Motobi uses a smoke bomb and escapes. Yuhiro then begins to fall into deep thought. Because since the day he was born, Yuhiro has never let anyone protect him. The very concept of being protected is completely foreign to Yuhiro. And that alone makes Yuhiro angry. Motobi is lucky to have escaped from Yuhiro. He himself didn't expect that he could still hold firm against the monster's rage. Motobi still decides that he will protect everyone. The next day, Yuhiro goes to Tokugawa's place. Tokugawa is having tea with Musashi. Yuhiro asks Tokugawa who exactly he has summoned here. Yuhiro is already waiting outside the room. The two monsters finally meet face to face. And afterward they sit down to drink sake together. The two of them empty their cups together. Right now, the scene before Musashi is a mountain of money. He then asks Yuhiro what he sees in him. Yuhiro finds that question rather foolish. He is simply happy that the legendary swordsman Musashi is standing before him. He feels as though his dream has become reality. At this moment, Yuhiro sees only Musashi and nothing else. The two continue drinking and talking together. Musashi begins recounting his glorious past. Clearly, he wanted everything: fame, admiration, and praise. He wanted to become someone who could neither hide nor escape attention. He wanted to rise higher in this world. As soon as he finishes speaking, he slashes Yuhiro. Yuhiro calmly continues drinking without showing any sign of pain. Musashi admits that Yuhiro's body is extremely strong and tough. It feels as if he just struck a suit of iron armor. This is the first time Musashi has been unable to cut someone. Yuhiro admits that it is truly disappointing. He says the sword hasn't even been fully drawn yet. And Musashi is already claiming it can't cut or pierce anything. Yuhiro then uses a single finger to slice the sake bottle clean in half. A shard of glass flies and hits Musashi in the face. Yuhiro tells Tokugawa to bring Musashi his swords immediately. Musashi admits that Yuhiro is truly generous. Then the two immediately head outside to the yard to fight. It has been a long time since Musashi has held a pair of swords. He immediately draws them. At that very moment, Yuhiro rushes forward and grabs the sword. Yuhiro warns Musashi not to be too arrogant. Yuhiro delivers a straight slap across Musashi's face. Yuhiro continues charging forward while still gripping the sword tightly. The two struggle with each other over the blade. Musashi admits that Yuhiro is incredibly fierce. He doesn't even remember being struck. Yet he already wandered on the brink of death. This is something the martial masters of this era have taught him. Because living in an era without swords allowed them to reach that level. But that is not Musashi's swordsmanship. The two continue to clash, one holding the blade, the other gripping the hilt. Yuhiro is swung along with the sword. Then they finally stop competing for control of the blade. Both of them prepare to unleash their full power without holding anything back. Tokugawa cannot contain his excitement while watching the battle. Musashi takes the initiative to attack. Yuhiro counters by blocking and dodging the twin slash. His thigh is also grazed by the attack. For Yujiro, it has been a very long time since he last had to dodge an opponent's strike. The killing intent from both of them becomes incredibly intense. Like two kings of the jungle facing each other. A true clash of dragon and tiger. Tokugawa doesn't even know how to compare the two. In terms of pure power, no one in this world can match them. Absolutely no creature could possibly defeat them. Musashi charges straight toward his opponent. He intends to finish his enemy at close range. His speed is so fast it is impossible to blink in time. But suddenly, Yujiro catches Musashi's hand, then he delivers a kick to a vital spot, forcing Musashi to pull back his sword. Even after losing consciousness, Musashi still refuses to let go of his sword. But the pain that forces it from his hand is something he has never experienced before. Tokugawa believes the outcome of the battle is already decided. Suddenly, in the midst of the pain, an idea emerges in Musashi's mind. Musashi asks for his opponent's name once again. He decides to use the unfinished secret technique he once developed in Higa on Yujiro. In the past, Musashi trained every single day. He trained to the point where he could even write without using a brush. And of course, the same applied to his sword. It could be said that he had reached the realm of no sword. Yujiro introduces himself, saying that people often call him the strongest creature on earth. Musashi admits that Yujiro is very strong. He explains that Yujiro deliberately endured direct hits just to land a kick at Musashi's vital spot. Yujiro also admits that Musashi is very strong compared to the rumors. Musashi says the rumors about him have lasted for 400 years. He truly loves that fact. He also understands that Yujiro currently stands at the very peak. Tokugawa confirms that this is indeed true. The man standing before them is the very pinnacle of strength in this world. Suddenly, Musashi sheaths his swords. Then he returns both swords to Tokugawa. After that, he steps back into the battle. Musashi sees this moment as another opportunity for advancement. Even though he is still in pain, Musashi can continue fighting. And so the battle between the two resumes. Even without swords in his hands, Musashi's bare hands become two sharp blades. Musashi feels that everything is going perfectly. The right moment is about to arrive. Yujiro also realizes that his opponent has reached the realm of the swordless. Musashi attacks again. Suddenly, Motobi interrupts the fight. Yujiro becomes furious at Motobi's actions. He immediately punches Motobi for daring to step in and protect the great Hanma Yujiro. Musashi also stops Yujiro. Tokugawa wants the same thing. He asks Yujiro to calm down because the one who interfered is Motobi. This battle has not yet determined a winner. Motobi regains consciousness after a while. He remembers that he had just been slashed by Musashi. Tokugawa thinks Motobi's actions were extremely dangerous. The two fighters have already disappeared somewhere. Motobi believes that if he had not intervened, Yujiro would have been cut down. He thinks everyone's understanding of martial arts is too shallow. That is exactly why someone like Motobi is needed. Tokugawa listens but still doesn't fully understand. Motobi throws a dagger and kills a cockroach with it. He then promises that in the next fight he will personally defeat Musashi. Yujiro and Musashi go walking through the streets together. Everyone around them stares at the two of them. Musashi is surprised that Yujiro is so famous. Yujiro replies that Musashi is the same way. Tokugawa finally understands Motobi's intentions. Motobi is a practitioner of traditional martial arts and insists that he can defeat Musashi. He is willing to fight under special rules and use any weapon he wants. Motobi asks Tokugawa to prepare everything, saying he is certain he can do it. Musashi and Yujiro go out to drink whiskey together. They continue talking and sharing stories. Yujiro clearly explains Motobi's character to Musashi. Musashi admits that among all the opponents he has fought, Motobi has the most tricks. Earlier, Motobi had already prepared several hidden weapons on his body. In short, Motobi is a master of weapon usage. Motobi can use weapons anywhere at any time. Yujiro admits that Motobi is a formidable opponent. He now places his expectations on Musashi. Gaia goes to meet his master. The two have not seen each other for a long time. They return to the dojo together. After chatting for a while, Motobi suggests that they spar with each other. Gaia gladly accepts his master's challenge. Like master, like student, Gaia also uses dirty tricks that Motobi once taught him. After exchanging a few words, Gaia launches another attack. He plans to play dirty against his teacher again. But this time Motobi anticipates it and immediately knocks Gaia to the floor. Gaia immediately admits defeat. Afterward, Motobi ties him up with a belt. Motobi even pulls down his pants afterward. And the master and student laugh together happily. Jack goes to Tokugawa's house. At this point, Jack is 2 meters 43 centimeters tall and weighs 201 kilograms. Of course, Jack has come here to meet Musashi. Tokugawa says someone else wants to meet Musashi before Jack does. Jack soon learns that the person is Motobi. Motobi refuses to allow Jack to fight Musashi. Tokugawa suggests that Jack try fighting Motobi instead. Indeed, Motobi is a very mysterious person, and no one truly understands him. Tokugawa realizes he has been too careless. He asks Jack whether he knows how to use weapons. Jack admits that he does not, though he has some experience. Tokugawa wants Jack to give Motobi a taste of his power. That very night, Jack goes to find Motobi. The two of them run into each other right on the street. Motobi admits that Jack has grown much bigger than before. After exchanging a few greetings, they immediately start fighting. Motobi plays dirty by flicking the cigarette in his hand straight into Jack's face. Then he immediately rushes in and kicks Jack right in the face. Jack becomes extremely excited because this is what a real fight should look like. Motobi continues by pulling out a weapon and attacking Jack again. This time he strikes both of Jack's legs, causing him intense pain. Motobi is surprised that even while kneeling, Jack still looks enormous. Just as Jack tries to stand up, Motobi smashes a stick straight into his head. Jack falls face first to the ground again. But in reality, Jack is only pretending. Jack immediately rolls and jumps back to his feet. Jack decides to allow Motobi to keep using weapons. This time, Jack successfully takes off his shirt. Tokugawa had warned him that Motobi is completely different in a real fight. Jack admits that Motobi fights like a highly trained warrior. Jack asks him not to underestimate athletes. Motobi considers athletes to be a threat to martial artists. As soon as he finishes speaking, Jack launches a powerful kick directly at Motobi. Motobi is blown far away by the impact. When Jack looks down, he realizes his leg has been stabbed by a dagger. He pulls the dagger out. Motobi continues approaching him. People on the street think the two are filming a movie. The battle continues again. Jack launches a downward kick from above. Motobi plays dirty again and pulls out a weapon to defend himself. He praises Jack's terrifying bone density, because otherwise, Jack's foot would have been cut off. Jack rushes forward and bites into Motobi's shoulder with his teeth. But surprisingly, Motobi is completely unharmed. He even thinks that the usual Jack would have bitten straight through the bone. He says the bite is powerful, but it is not martial arts. Motobi pulls his shoulder away, causing all of Jack's teeth to break. Motobi had already prepared armor made from dramid fibers to counter Jack's bites. This material is used for parachute cords and radial tires. He has completely neutralized Jack's most dangerous weapon. Motobi believes the fight should end here, because Jack has lost everything he needs to continue fighting. Ending the battle now would be reasonable. Jack becomes furious at these words. He immediately charges forward to attack again. Motobi now sees Jack like a lion that has lost its fangs, or a bear that has lost its claws. Jack still manages to corner Motobi and throws punch after punch. The people on the street think the situation is extremely dangerous. Motobi pulls out a smoke bomb again, but this time he cannot escape from Jack. He is shocked that Jack refuses to stop. Even more surprising, Jack is actually accelerating. Motobi kicks Jack straight in the face. Jack suddenly smells explosives coming from Motobi's body. Motobi admits that Jack is a terrifying natural-born warrior. He has been punched so hard by Jack that he didn't even notice the explosion. Motobi thinks he should increase the amount of explosives next time. He then throws hidden weapons at Jack again. After that, he ties Jack up with chains. Motobi decides to fight with everything he has. He launches a series of relentless attacks on Jack. Jack is forced to endure constant weapon strikes in pain. Motobi then breaks Jack's arm. The arm is completely useless now. He takes a rope and ties both of Jack's arms together. Motobi declares that he has won the fight. He says he has the right to take lives. Whether he kills or spares his opponent is his own decision. He leaves the scene, abandoning Jack on the ground. But he still says that he will be the one protecting Jack. Recently, not a single carp has been seen in the Kanda River. Everyone is surprised because carp used to be everywhere. That night, a fisherman goes out to fish. Suddenly something enormous bites his hook. He struggles to reel it in, but the fishing line suddenly snaps. He thinks it might be a huge tuna. But suddenly, a monster appears. The next day, news spreads about a boat that was twisted and broken in half. The story quickly becomes the center of public attention. Police and reporters arrive at the scene to investigate the cause. Then the monster appears once again. The reporter has no idea what is happening. And that monster turns out to be a gigantic crocodile. Even more interesting, Pickle is hunting it. This crocodile has eaten all the carp in the river, which is why it has grown extremely large. But in Pickle's eyes, it is only a small dinosaur. And of course, it will become one of Pickle's meals. Pickle drags the crocodile into a sewer tunnel and disappears. The news about the crocodile and Pickle becomes the main topic the next day. After watching the news, Musashi immediately slashes the TV. Tokugawa thinks that is a foolish thing to do, because it was only footage recorded by a camera. Musashi wants to know who the man in the video is. Tokugawa tells him that it is Pickle, the strongest male from the Cretaceous period, a dinosaur hunter who hunted them for food. He also explains the story of how Pickle appeared in the modern world. Musashi then asks where Pickle is now. Tokugawa ends up getting slashed as well. Musashi finds Pickle very interesting. A man whose power has not yet been fully refined. In some ways, he feels Pickle is similar to himself. So Musashi asks Tokugawa to arrange a meeting with Pickle. Motobi has also learned the news that Pickle has appeared. He guesses that Musashi definitely will not ignore this situation. Motobi realizes that he has forgotten something. Because Pickle cannot be left unprotected either. Dr. Payne, the renowned paleontologist, rushed to Japan as an emergency response. He confirmed that the mysterious man was none other than Pickle. Reporters asked him about the gigantic creature that Pickle had hunted as prey. Dr. Payne explained that, to Pickle, the beast was nothing more than a simple meal. The reporters then questioned how Pickle had managed to survive after suddenly disappearing. Dr. Payne revealed that Pickle had been living inside the underground sewer system. He explained that the sewers beneath the metropolis were essentially an ideal forest. Warm water flowed through them continuously. The temperature and humidity remained perfect all year round. As long as discarded animals found their way underground, the place would become a paradise for wildlife. Every creature living there would grow to enormous sizes. Countless tropical species were now thriving beneath Tokyo. The reporters wondered what should be done now that Pickle was hiding there. Dr. Payne firmly declared that Pickle was a priceless treasure of humanity. He insisted that Pickle had to be captured immediately. The Japanese government accepted his recommendation and ordered the Tokyo Metropolitan Police to begin the operation at once. 91 riot police officers were immediately deployed. Following Dr. Payne's instructions, they prepared 5 tons of chloroform. The location where Pickle had last been spotted became the center of the operation. 10 locations within a 1,000-meter radius were targeted. The surrounding sewer tunnels were flooded with chloroform. Before long, Pickle was successfully captured once again. The news immediately caused another massive public uproar. Everyone wondered where Pickle would be taken. He was eventually transported to Dr. Payne's research facility. Pickle gave off a terrible odor after going without a bath for such a long time. Dr. Payne himself was amazed by the massive facility hidden deep underground. He was then briefed on the true purpose of the complex. It was considered one of the world's greatest scientific research facilities. Meanwhile, Tokugawa brought Musashi to the facility as well. The two were delighted to meet each other again. Tokugawa then explained everything about Pickle to Musashi. He couldn't believe Pickle had survived in the heart of Tokyo using such a method. Musashi wondered if the man standing before him was really that famous. Tokugawa answered that he was famous across the entire world. Some even called him the strongest man on earth. Without saying another word, Musashi suddenly slapped Pickle across the face. Everyone present was completely stunned by the shocking scene. Musashi calmly continued slapping him again and again. Tokugawa had no idea what on earth Musashi was doing. Dr. Pain could only mutter that the man was absolutely insane. Musashi was surprised that Pickle remained asleep despite taking those blows. He decided to unleash his invisible sword. As expected, Pickle immediately woke up. Musashi attempted to decapitate Pickle with his invisible slash. However, the attack failed to cut through his neck. Musashi admitted that Pickle possessed an incredible neck. He recalled once slicing through 8 men standing before a general. He even had enough power left to cut through 6 more arms and the execution platform itself. Back then, he had received endless praise and admiration. Yet now, he couldn't cut through Yuhiro's collarbone. And now even Pickle's neck had completely stopped his blade. Musashi acknowledged that Pickle was truly a fortress of muscle. The two warriors finally confronted each other face to face. Musashi openly admitted that he had just attacked Pickle. Without hesitation, Pickle charged forward to strike. Musashi blocked Pickle's bite with his bare hand. He immediately followed up with a barrage of invisible sword slashes. Pickle cried out in agony from the relentless attacks. Musashi admitted that Pickle was a true beast worthy of standing as his equal. Pickle completely lost control. Even so, he continued taking Musashi's invisible slashes. Once again, the pain was overwhelming. Musashi couldn't believe that the same sword capable of cutting armor in half felt completely different when it struck Pickle's muscles. His blade couldn't reach Pickle's internal organs or bones. Every slash left nothing more than bruises. Pickle suddenly recalled memories from his ancient past. In those prehistoric lands, he had fought creatures over 100 times heavier than himself. Among those beasts was one especially terrifying opponent. It was small, yet unbelievably fast. Its greatest strength was its incredible agility. Most dangerous of all were its razor-sharp claws. During that battle, Pickle suffered countless wounds from those claws. Unlike the Tyrannosaurus that scavenged rotten carcasses, this predator hunted only healthy and ferocious prey. It always targeted the strongest opponents available. Those ancient memories filled Pickle's mind once again. That dinosaur was called Deinonychus. To Pickle, Musashi reminded him of that very predator. The two were then escorted to the testing laboratory. This room had originally been built to evaluate Musashi's physical abilities after his revival. The walls were reinforced with duralumin. The floor was made entirely of rubber. Dr. Pain questioned whether everyone had truly lost their minds. He knew Musashi was a miracle created through cloning technology. Pickle, meanwhile, had been excavated from a rock salt layer over 1,000 meters underground. He too was an undeniable miracle. Dr. Pain believed it would be a tragedy if either, or both, of these miracles disappeared. He saw the fight as nothing more than childish curiosity risking irreplaceable lives. He desperately begged both of them to come to their senses. Tokugawa dismissed him as nothing more than a noisy distraction. The greatest swordsman of the Warring States era had finally met the strongest warrior of the Cretaceous Age. One sought victory through combat. The other simply wanted to devour his opponent. Tokugawa believed everyone present was witnessing an unbelievable miracle. He gave Dr. Pain permission to leave, because no one would be allowed to interfere with this dream match. Dr. Pain suddenly pulled out a handgun. He had prepared for this very situation in advance. He had predicted exactly what was about to happen. Even then, he begged everyone to stop the battle and disperse. Before he could finish speaking, Musashi crushed his hand. At the same instant, Musashi's invisible blade sliced across Dr. Pain's entire body. The doctor suddenly realized that his head had already been severed. Musashi curiously examined how the strange weapon called a gun worked. He then fired it himself. He admitted it was easier to use than throwing knives and astonishingly accurate. Even so, he believed this was not the proper path for a warrior. At last, the battle between Musashi and Pickle officially began. Now, no one remained to interfere with their fight. Musashi confidently declared that his flesh would taste sweet. In Pickle's eyes, Musashi looked like an erupting volcano. Dr. Pain still couldn't believe what had just happened. He vividly remembered every invisible slash Musashi had delivered. Every part of his body had been cleanly severed. He finally realized that he had died. Every cell in his brain recognized his own death in that instant. Pickle made the first move once again. The image of his ancient nemesis resurfaced in his mind. Musashi dodged the attack and slashed directly at Pickle's leg. Pickle roared in pain. Musashi realized he had only cut through flesh. Pickle's bones and internal organs remained completely unharmed. Pickle charged forward once more. Musashi countered with another slash. Once again, only flesh was cut. Musashi couldn't understand what kind of monster Pickle truly was. Pickle was unlike anyone Musashi had ever faced in this era. Musashi suddenly imagined a mountain of wealth standing behind Pickle, along with endless praise, glory, and rewards. He acknowledged that Pickle was truly a monster. That monstrous body reflected an extraordinary past. Musashi admitted that Pickle's strength was absolutely terrifying. Rather than fearing it, he found it exhilarating. He decided to take everything Pickle possessed for himself. Suddenly, Pickle entered his hunting stance. Even Musashi was surprised by the posture. He realized Pickle wanted a direct confrontation. Musashi stood his ground and accepted the challenge head-on. The two clashed using nothing but raw physical strength. They locked hands in a fierce test of power. Pickle's grip represented the pinnacle of the dinosaur era during the Cretaceous period. Musashi, on the other hand, could crush bamboo joints in the blink of an eye. Tokugawa watched the contest in complete excitement. Neither side was willing to give an inch. For Pickle, grappling with prey was an everyday instinct. That gave him a natural advantage. Musashi kicked off the wall and drove his head straight into Pickle's face. Pickle was knocked flat onto the ground. A massive crater was left in the wall behind them. An ordinary person would have died instantly from that headbutt. Musashi asked Tokugawa for another match. His invisible sword simply couldn't overcome Pickle's fortress-like muscles. He knew Pickle's bones and internal organs had suffered no damage whatsoever. This time, Musashi wanted to fight with a real sword. Pickle threw him violently across the room. Even then, Musashi admired Pickle's incredible strength. He wondered whether Pickle could still toss him around so easily if he used a real blade. Tokugawa agreed that things would be different with a genuine sword. Pickle would almost certainly bleed to death. Musashi simply replied that no one could know until the blade actually struck. Dr. Payne continued doing everything he could to protect Pickle. Musashi couldn't understand Western languages. He simply hoped Dr. Payne wouldn't fear the outcome. The doctor had no response. Musashi then asked about his beloved sword. Tokugawa revealed that it was the legendary Mumi Kaneshige. The sword was currently resting peacefully in Higa province. Musashi wanted everyone to witness its unmatched sharpness. Meanwhile, Baki and Doppo were enjoying tea together. Both admitted the other had become stronger than before. Yet they also shared something else in common. Both of them had lost to Musashi. Surprisingly, the two reached the exact same conclusion. Their conversation turned toward the life or death battles. Baki also shared several fascinating observations about Musashi. Doppo listened with great excitement. The battle between Musashi and Pickle would undoubtedly be the purest fight imaginable. The following day, Tokugawa returned carrying the legendary sword. It had finally been returned to its rightful owner. Musashi sincerely thanked Tokugawa. Tokugawa suddenly noticed the sword's cord moving by itself. Musashi explained that it had untied itself. He believed the sword simply wished to return to his side. It was finally time to test the blade. Tokugawa had prepared genuine training targets for Musashi. Since Musashi was no longer allowed to cut down people freely, this was the only option. Among the targets was a traditional makiwara. It was made from fresh bamboo wrapped in tatami mats and tightly bound with rope. Its durability was comparable to a human neck. Musashi began testing his sword. He slowly drew the blade. Then he gently pressed it against the makiwara. Tokugawa was stunned as it split cleanly in two with almost no effort. Musashi asked him to step back. He stomped heavily onto the floor. Then he swung his sword and sliced a riot police dummy completely in half. One after another, every remaining dummy was effortlessly cut apart. Musashi demonstrated a wide variety of sword techniques. Every strike ended with a different finishing method. Tokugawa found the entire display absolutely exhilarating. He even imagined his own head being severed by one of Musashi's invisible slashes. Begging Musashi never to play tricks like that again. Meanwhile, Motobi learned about the upcoming death match between Musashi and Pickle. A battle where weapons would be allowed. He refused to accept such a fight. Motobi believed Tokugawa still didn't understand. He didn't grasp what it truly meant for Musashi to wield a real sword. The problem wasn't Pickle. The problem was that no one should ever stand before Musashi's blade. Tokugawa joked that Motobi was the only exception. Motobi warned him not to joke about something so serious. He had no intention of running away anymore. He believed he belonged to Musashi's era more than anyone else alive. Facing Musashi was his responsibility. Tokugawa admitted that was an admirable resolve. That evening, Musashi wandered through the city. He considered cutting down the towering skyscrapers. He even imagined what would happen after a single slash. Every building would surely collapse. But even his beloved sword would probably suffer damage in the process. Suddenly, Gaia appeared before him. He had come to meet the legendary Musashi whom everyone respected. Gaia revealed that he had already passed up several opportunities to kill him. Musashi admitted Gaia had matured despite still looking so young. He knew Gaia had been watching him for the past 15 minutes. Gaia believed he had already gained control of Musashi's blind spot. Musashi calmly concluded that Gaia posed no real danger. He guessed Gaia was carrying several hidden weapons. But none of them truly concerned him. The instant Gaia reached for a weapon, he realized the tendons in his arm had already been severed. Musashi warned Gaia not to wave firearms around so carelessly. Then Musashi released his overwhelming killing intent. Gaia was visibly shaken by the pressure. He felt as though he were standing before a battle-hardened supreme military commander. Musashi's abilities existed on an entirely different level. Everything about him was so perfect that not a single weakness could be found. Gaia truly believed he was facing the legendary swordsman himself. Gaia then pulled out a knife. Musashi calmly prepared to respond. He immediately realized Gaia had no intention of stabbing him. Nor did he intend to slash or throw the knife. Gaia was shocked that Musashi had already seen through his strategy. Musashi even identified the weapon as a disguised short-barreled firearm. Gaia believed the realization had come too late. Yet Musashi effortlessly caught the weapon. He praised it as a truly fascinating invention. Gaia couldn't believe Musashi had caught it so easily at that speed and distance. Musashi stepped closer and said he wanted to show Gaia something. This time, he allowed Gaia to experience the sensation of his invisible slashes. Gaia felt as though his entire body had been torn into countless pieces. Musashi remarked that it was truly marvelous. He carefully explained each of the 4 invisible slashes to Gaia. Of course, Gaia had witnessed every single one. He willingly admitted defeat. He had relied on weapons, while Musashi had used nothing at all. Yet Gaia still ended up completely cut to pieces. Musashi explained that his sword already existed within his own body. It had been there from the very beginning. Gaia realized the gap between them was immeasurable. It was so vast that he couldn't even see where the summit lay. Gaia brought up Musashi's upcoming battle with Pickle. He questioned whether wielding a real sword again was truly necessary. Musashi paused to think for a moment. He then asked Gaia if he truly understood the meaning of cutting someone down. Next, he asked what kind of man Pickle really was. Gaia couldn't answer any of those questions. Musashi patiently explained everything to him. Only those who have been cut can truly understand it down to their very bones. Meanwhile, back at the arena, Pickle still hadn't eaten a single meal. Even though Tokugawa had prepared genuine dinosaur meat for him. 4 days passed, yet Pickle remained seated without moving. Even Tyrannosaurus meat failed to tempt him. Baki jumped down into the arena. He walked over to speak with Pickle. It had been a long time since the two had met. Pickle showed no hostility toward Baki. Later, Tokugawa asked what the two of them had talked about. Baki replied that they hadn't exchanged a single word. After all, Pickle couldn't speak, but Baki understood one thing clearly. Pickle's determination was absolute. He had officially recognized Musashi as his prey. Tokugawa was shocked to hear that. Baki became excited at the thought of Pickle finally devouring his prey. Tokugawa believed that was impossible. Pickle had weakened to the point where he could barely eat. Baki corrected him immediately. It wasn't that Pickle couldn't eat. He simply chose not to. He was saving his appetite for a magnificent feast. He wanted the meal to be as dramatic as possible. Baki finally understood what Doppo had meant before. Hunger was nature's ultimate state. Baki also learned that Musashi's beloved sword had finally returned to him. That made him wonder whether a Tyrannosaurus's fangs were inferior to a sword. The following day, Doppo visited Tokugawa. The two enjoyed drinks and shared a plate of delicious gyoza. Doppo praised both the food and the sake. Their conversation eventually returned to the topic of fasting. Tokugawa repeated what Baki had said earlier. Which was stronger, a sword or a predator's fangs? Doppo responded with a story about a hunter facing countless wild beasts. Even with a rifle in hand, nature remained brutally unforgiving. Both Pickle and Musashi had overcome entirely different kinds of enemies. Each achieved victory through his own path. Even Doppo and Tokugawa couldn't determine which was truly superior. Later, Tokugawa had lunch with Musashi. They enjoyed their meal outdoors in the pleasant weather. The only annoyance was the large number of flies. Musashi casually caught a fly with his chopsticks. He eliminated it instantly. Then he continued catching every remaining fly. He even sliced off all of their wings. Tokugawa finally realized the old legend was true. Musashi really could catch flies with chopsticks while eating. After lunch, their meal came to an end. Tokugawa brought up Pickle's desire to eat Musashi. Musashi was genuinely surprised by the news. Tokugawa joked that Pickle would probably start with his head. Musashi couldn't help but smile. He never imagined he could actually become someone's meal. He thought the goal was simply victory in battle. He never imagined he would look so delicious to someone. The decisive battle would take place the following day. Everything was finally ready. Motobi also arrived at the underground arena. Pickle hadn't eaten, drunk, or even slept for several days. He had prepared himself for his wildest possible state. At last, the decisive day arrived. The Tokyo Dome underground arena was ready. This was the place where the world's strongest gathered. Tokugawa stepped into the arena. He immediately noticed something astonishing. Every legendary fighter had already taken a seat in the audience. None of them came merely for entertainment. They came because they needed to witness history. Every spectator had chosen a path stained with blood and sweat. Watching this battle was their duty. This was not a public execution. Nor was it a simple massacre. It was a true contest between the strongest. Musashi finally entered the arena. Pickle instantly sensed the natural enemy of the dinosaurs standing before him. Without hesitation, he charged forward. Musashi drew his sword and struck. But his blade was stopped by Pickle's fortress-like muscles. Even Musashi was stunned. The audience couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Once again, Musashi praised Pickle's unbelievable body. Pickle landed a devastating blow on Musashi. Musashi was sent flying into the spectator stands before crashing to the ground. Tokugawa wondered if the battle had already ended. Pickle had also been wounded by Musashi's slash. He picked up Musashi's sword. Then he tested its sharpness with his own hand. Pickle looked directly toward Musashi. He suddenly swung the sword downward. Baki couldn't even see the blade move. Pickle drove the sword into the ground. Everyone then realized the floor had been split open in a perfectly straight line. Musashi slowly stood back up. He admitted this was the first time anyone had stopped his sword using nothing but muscle. He realized the blade had been trapped between Pickle's bones and muscles. The following impact happened so quickly that he couldn't even perceive it. Musashi lay there waiting for the next attack. But nothing came. At that moment, he felt Pickle had become a swordsman. Pickle launched another attack while wielding the sword. However, Musashi used a clever trick and struck one of Pickle's eyes. The attack stopped immediately. Musashi recovered his sword. He declared that even a fortress of muscle still had countless vulnerable points. He began cutting into the angles and joints of Pickle's body. Blood poured from Pickle's wounds. Every targeted point had been sliced open. Everyone watching acknowledged that this was true swordsmanship. Yet Musashi became puzzled. The parts he had targeted should have been completely severed. Instead, Pickle suffered only deep wounds. Musashi concluded that Pickle would eventually lose consciousness from blood loss. Victory would belong to him. But he wasn't satisfied with winning that way. He still wanted to cut Pickle down completely. With one glorious finishing slash, Baki realized Musashi had finally understood how magnificent Pickle's body truly was. Musashi found the perfect opportunity. The instant Pickle's iron-like muscles relaxed into softness, Musashi invited Pickle to come and eat him. He told Pickle to enjoy the meal without holding back, because he knew there wasn't much time left. Pickle immediately charged forward once again. He attacked with the same devastating bite. Musashi seized the brief instant when Pickle's body was at its softest before becoming rigid again. He unleashed a decisive slash. Pickle took the full force of the attack. The deep wound sent blood spraying everywhere. Baki believed the battle was finally over. The spectators also felt there was nothing left to prove. Kureha hurried over to Tokugawa. He believed the outcome was already decided. He urged Tokugawa to stop the fight immediately. Tokugawa replied that only the two fighters had the right to decide when it would end. The match would only stop when both warriors accepted its conclusion. By then, Musashi's shoulder had also been severely injured by Pickle's devastating bite. Musashi realized that Pickle had taken a bite out of him. He wondered whether his flesh actually tasted good. He couldn't believe Pickle was enjoying the meal despite Musashi being covered in wounds. Musashi carefully read Pickle's muscle movements and breathing patterns. Even so, he still couldn't land his glorious finishing slash. Pickle continued savoring Musashi's flesh. Musashi deliberately provoked him. He claimed that small bite wasn't nearly enough. Musashi even invited Pickle to try eating his head. Naturally, Pickle couldn't understand the words, but he clearly understood the intention behind them. He realized Musashi was looking down on him. Pickle decided to unleash his final form. Even Musashi was caught off guard. Pickle's entire body began to transform. Every aspect of his physique was dramatically enhanced. Musashi finally accepted that Pickle was no ordinary human. The spectators were equally astonished by Pickle's ultimate state. Even the bleeding from his wounds suddenly stopped. Musashi saw Pickle as nothing less than a demon. Even so, he welcomed the challenge. Pickle charged forward once again. Musashi managed to slash him again. He realized Pickle's muscles had become even harder than before. They were so dense that they completely stopped the bleeding. Musashi declared that a monster like this deserved to be cut without restraint. He openly admitted that he loved cutting down his opponents. Whenever given the chance, he simply couldn't stop himself. That was Musashi's greatest flaw. He wanted to keep cutting rather than finish the fight immediately. Every opponent from his own era had fallen after a single strike. To Musashi, no body should withstand 10 slashes without collapsing. Yet Pickle had already endured 6 direct slashes. Musashi wondered how much longer Pickle could continue. At that very moment, a memory flashed through Pickle's mind. The sensation reminded him of no opponent he had ever fought. Instead, it reminded him of a gigantic prehistoric bee. The creature whose sting had once made his mouth feel like it exploded after he accidentally bit it. Pickle transformed his body once more, but his fighting spirit had completely disappeared. He no longer wanted to eat. Pickle turned around and began walking away. Baki immediately realized Pickle was making an emergency retreat. Musashi had no intention of letting him leave so easily. Even Pickle had begun to fear his opponent. Musashi had no interest in cutting down someone who was trembling in fear. Pickle let out a deafening roar. Then he fled the arena at full speed. Even Musashi was surprised by such an instinctive escape. The spectators couldn't believe Pickle had actually run away. Pickle escaped while covered in wounds. Motobi intercepted him inside the underground tunnel. He believed Pickle should have retreated much sooner. Motobi declared that he would handle everything from there. He then walked into the arena himself. Motobi smiled and said today was a wonderful day. It was finally time to enjoy the decades he had devoted to this life. He celebrated by spraying sake into the air. Everyone watching was stunned by Motobi's sudden appearance. Motobi respectfully greeted Lord Musashi. Before entering the arena, he had spoken with his master, Shibukawa. Shibukawa urged him to stop, but Motobi refused to back down any longer. Shibukawa asked how often he trained. Motobi answered that he trained several times every day. Shibukawa looked puzzled. Motobi explained that those were only the moments when his mind drifted away from the martial path. Tokugawa stepped in to stop him. He reminded Motobi that today wasn't his scheduled match. Today belonged to Pickle. Suddenly, the entire audience erupted into applause. Motobi realized they were expressing everything he wanted to say. He thanked every single one of them. Then he bowed respectfully to Tokugawa. Tokugawa replied that no matter how much support Motobi received, the final decision still belonged to Musashi. Motobi stepped forward to face Musashi. He declared that the decision didn't belong to Musashi at all. If Musashi refused to fight, Motobi would simply stab him in the back. He immediately launched a surprise eye strike. Motobi successfully caught Musashi off guard. He trapped Musashi's leg and threw him across the arena. Musashi admitted the attack had been effective. He acknowledged that every one of Motobi's techniques worked. They were all battlefield techniques from Musashi's own era. Musashi welcomed Motobi with genuine respect. Motobi calmly lit a cigarette. Then he offered Musashi a bottle of sake. He even invited Musashi to smoke with him. Musashi carefully smelled both the cigarette and the alcohol. He declared that only the cigarette Motobi was actually smoking was genuine. Everyone realized their trick had been exposed. Musashi guessed the poison came from pufferfish toxin. Both the alcohol and the spare cigarettes had been coated with poison. The spectators couldn't believe Musashi could even identify the toxin. Motobi was shocked that his painstaking preparations had been exposed so effortlessly. Even so, he remained confident that his lifelong skills still had a chance to shine. Motobi flicked the lit cigarette toward Musashi. Musashi casually caught it and took a puff himself. He admitted it tasted surprisingly good. Musashi declared that the drifting smoke would signal the continuation of their battle. The instant the smoke cleared, both warriors sprang into action. This time, Motobi moved faster than Musashi. Musashi was struck in the face with a bottle of sake. That was immediately followed by another attack using the cigarette pack. Musashi fell to the ground, only to be blasted again by one of Motobi's hidden explosives. The audience was completely overwhelmed by Motobi's fighting style. He turned absolutely everything into a weapon. Motobi then used chains to seize Musashi's sword. As the smoke slowly faded once more, Musashi smiled with excitement. He remarked that it had been a long time since he had smelled smoke bombs. Musashi calmly reset the tendons in his injured leg. Then he asked how Motobi intended to atone for leaving a scar on his face. Motobi admitted that Musashi was truly terrifying. He then returned Musashi's sword. Musashi accepted it as casually as if he were picking up an ornament. Motobi also returned the sword's scabbard, but the moment it reached Musashi, it exploded violently. Motobi immediately took advantage of the opening. He lashed Musashi's wounded shoulder with a chain. Gaia watched in excitement as his master completely overwhelmed the legendary swordsman. Musashi suddenly tasted the blood in his own mouth. He realized one of his molars had been loosened. Musashi admitted that Motobi had achieved something miraculous. Motobi grabbed hold of Musashi's sword once again. He tried with all his strength to pull it away, but the sword refused to move even an inch. Musashi effortlessly cut through the chain. Once again, he asked how Motobi intended to make up for scarring a swordsman's face. Musashi then offered several different execution techniques as a farewell gift, allowing Motobi to choose one. After a brief moment of thought, Motobi chose to die of old age instead. Musashi wondered why Motobi would risk his life in a place like this. If he truly wanted to live a long life, he should have stayed out of danger. Motobi quoted the famous samurai text Hagakure. It states that the way of the samurai is the way of death. But in the modern era, samurai no longer exist to protect their lords. Their lives are now meant to protect themselves and the innocent people around them. Motobi drew another hidden weapon. He declared that his life had evolved into a path devoted to that purpose. This time, he wielded a short spear. Motobi knew his spear couldn't match Musashi's sword. Even so, he attacked without hesitation. Once again, he successfully wounded Musashi. He immediately followed up with steel knuckle strikes. Musashi collapsed to the ground. Motobi declared that human combat techniques had advanced tremendously since the Warring States era. He prepared to finish Musashi once and for all. But before he could act, Musashi struck him with a single slash. Everyone watching was left speechless. Musashi admitted that Motobi's attacks had been impressive, but they had only sharpened his focus even further. He had already discovered that Motobi was wearing chainmail armor. It was designed to prevent his body from being severed. Although the blade couldn't cut through completely, Motobi still suffered devastating injuries. Musashi insisted that his swordsmanship remained unmatched. He had also noticed armor protecting Motobi's arms and legs. Nothing escaped Musashi's eyes. He unleashed his invisible sword once again. declaring that the battle was over. Musashi recalled facing a warrior clad in full armor long ago. The armor had been forged from the finest steel of the Warring States period. Yet to Musashi, it had been nothing special. A single slash had cut both the armor and its wearer in half. Musashi slashed through Motobi's arm. Fortunately, the armor kept it from being completely severed. Gaia began worrying for his master. Musashi wasn't just another swordsman. Motobi attempted another counterattack with a hidden weapon, but Musashi cut both of his legs. Then followed a devastating slash across his body. Baki wanted the fight to end. He believed everyone had already seen enough. But Motobi refused to stop. If he surrendered now, he could never protect Baki. Motobi grabbed hold of Musashi and locked up his body. Then he slammed his forehead into Musashi's. As he struck, he thanked Musashi, because fate had granted him this final opportunity. This was all Motobi had left. He tightened a chokehold around Musashi's neck. The spectators believed Motobi was finally going to win. Once again, Musashi slashed Motobi with his sword. But Motobi refused to let go no matter what happened. His body had already suffered catastrophic injuries. Even so, he refused to loosen his grip, because doing so would mean failing to protect everyone. Eventually, even Musashi reached his limit. Motobi felt that he had finally caught up to Musashi's loneliness. The battle officially came to an end. The outcome had been decided. Baki couldn't believe Motobi had protected him once again. Every legendary fighter in the arena stood and applauded Motobi. A short while later, Musashi regained consciousness. He accepted his defeat at Motobi's hands. Motobi, however, believed Musashi had shown him mercy. Despite being his opponent, Musashi had never truly regarded him as a deadly threat. Most of Musashi's slashes had struck only his armor. There had been countless other openings where Musashi could have finished him. Motobi had studied everything ever written about Musashi. He knew Musashi was still polishing his skills. Even during this sparring match, Motobi believed Musashi had fought under the assumption that he would survive. At best, Motobi had only threatened Musashi's victory. Motobi then asked if Musashi wished to continue. Musashi quietly sheathed his sword. He walked away after thanking Motobi. Once again, he acknowledged his defeat. After the battle, Motobi was hospitalized. His arms and legs had been left almost crippled from fighting Musashi. Baki came to visit him. He asked Motobi to forgive him, because Motobi had risked everything to protect them all. Baki wanted to take responsibility for those feelings. Motobi told him not to blame himself. He believed he simply wasn't strong enough. He couldn't defeat the world's greatest fighters with his bare hands. An aging middle-aged man who lost every battle he fought. Someone like that naturally angered others by trying to protect them. Motobi admitted the burden had been beyond his limits. Baki disagreed. He believed everyone had underestimated Motobi as a warrior. Because of that, everyone had also underestimated Musashi's true power. Baki called that mistake pure ignorance. On behalf of everyone, he bowed his head in apology. Motobi recognized Baki as the strongest young fighter in the world. Baki had become the symbol of this era. He now carried humanity's very definition of strength. Then there was the strongest creature on Earth. To Motobi, Yujiro was nothing less than a god who maintained the world's balance. And humanity could never abandon its god. Master Shibukawa possessed techniques worthy of becoming a national treasure. He was a living cultural heritage that deserved protection. Doppo was the founder of modern karate. Without him, karate would lose its guiding sun. Katsumi had completely transformed himself into karate's second son. Gaia represented a unique combat style in harmony with nature. Pickle was humanity's priceless treasure. Hanayama possessed an unmatched sense of pride found nowhere else. Kureha embodied surgical precision in combat. Kosho specialized in deadly cutting techniques. Although Kiyosumi had lost his way, he had never abandoned karate. Kaku represented the pinnacle of Chinese martial arts with his extraordinary longevity. Jack stood at the peak of self-improvement with his terrifying bite strength. Oliva possessed overwhelming superhuman power. To Motobi, every one of them was a treasure of this generation. He believed they were all connected in some way. Motobi then asked Baki what he thought about Musashi. At that moment, Kureha entered the room. He informed them that Musashi was currently appearing on live television. Even the TV host was overwhelmed by Musashi's intimidating presence. To him, Musashi looked like a wild beast in human form. He struggled to find words capable of describing Musashi's overwhelming aura. Eventually, he introduced the legendary swordsman to the audience. By now, everyone already knew Musashi's name. Most remembered him because he had previously been a wanted fugitive. The television host was visibly nervous while interviewing Musashi. He finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. He admitted he still couldn't believe that the legendary Miyamoto Musashi was a real person. Baki immediately thought it was a foolish question. Musashi wondered why people still felt the need to ask his name. If he weren't Musashi, he wouldn't be standing there. The host explained that viewers would naturally find it difficult to believe a swordsman from 400 years ago could appear in the present day. Musashi swung his invisible sword once again. The TV host immediately realized he had just been cut. Musashi wanted to prove that he was standing before a real Musashi. The host explained to the audience that his left arm had just been slashed by an invisible blade. Before he could finish speaking, his neck was cut as well. Even then, he calmly described what had happened. He believed that if Musashi had been using a real sword, he would already be dead. The host then asked whether Musashi simply enjoyed cutting people. Musashi couldn't understand what was wrong with cutting someone. He slowly stood up. Everyone noticed something strange hanging at his waist. Baki shouted for the TV host to run, but Motobi realized it was already too late. Viewers all across Japan saw the transparent sword resting at Musashi's side. Musashi declared that cutting people while advancing was his profession. The host's disrespect had finally crossed the line. Musashi admitted the man had successfully provoked him. Then he struck once again. The shocking incident spread across the entire world. It would ultimately decide Musashi's fate. Afterward, the TV host recounted everything he had experienced during the live broadcast. He described every terrifying sensation in vivid detail. Meanwhile, the police convened an emergency meeting about Musashi. He was officially recognized as one of history's most dangerous criminals. Police forces were immediately dispatched to Tokugawa's residence. Even Tokugawa was surprised that Musashi had become the prime suspect. He attempted to explain what had happened during the live broadcast. After all, Musashi had never physically touched the TV host. Tokugawa pressured director Utsumi into cooperating. He warned that refusing would only create bigger problems. Just then, Musashi appeared. This time, he carried two swords at his waist. Musashi declared that he would disappear into hiding. But whenever he emerged, he would cut. Even the police instinctively backed away in fear. Musashi prepared to leave. Tokugawa asked him to return to the estate instead. As long as Musashi stayed there, Tokugawa could still protect him. Once Musashi stepped outside, everything would be beyond his control. He would no longer be able to save him. Musashi acknowledged Tokugawa's kindness. Tokugawa sincerely believed Musashi wouldn't survive on the outside. Musashi walked over to Tokugawa. He embraced the old man, then thanked him one last time. With that, Musashi officially departed. Police officers were already waiting outside the gate. Inspector Otsuka stepped forward to confront Musashi. He immediately sensed Musashi's terrifying aura. Otsuka admitted he had never encountered talent like this before. Musashi asked where Utsumi had gone. Otsuka replied that he had already left long ago. The inspector ordered Musashi to surrender his two swords and quietly enter the police vehicle. Musashi calmly replied that they were free to arrest him if they could. Otsuka warned that Musashi was making the entire nation his enemy. Musashi answered that he was prepared to cut down the entire nation if necessary. Otsuka immediately began issuing commands. If Musashi drew his sword, officers were to open fire instantly. Musashi calmly accepted the challenge. Then he moved first. Otsuka shouted that anyone seeing Musashi move should fire immediately. Yet when Musashi actually moved, not a single officer pulled the trigger. One policeman barely managed to raise his weapon before Musashi struck him down. Musashi then closed the distance and punched Otsuka square in the face. He immediately overwhelmed the surrounding officers. When Otsuka looked around again, every policeman had already been defeated. The following day, Otsuka reported everything that had happened. Not a single police officer had been capable of stopping Musashi. Musashi simply walked away. News of Musashi's rampage spread everywhere. Police continued surrounding Tokugawa's residence. The nationwide search for Musashi expanded rapidly. No one knew where the legendary swordsman had gone. Nor did anyone know what his true objective was. Baki remembered Motobi's words. He realized Motobi had been absolutely right. Musashi was unbearably lonely. Baki still couldn't forget Musashi's piercing gaze. Until now, he had only seen Musashi's overwhelming fighting ability. He had completely overlooked Musashi's absolute loneliness. Baki understood how difficult life would be without family or loved ones. Musashi had been thrown into a world where he trusted no one. A man transported 400 years from the Warring States era into modern society. Later, Musashi lit a small fire beneath a bridge and quietly rested there. Inspector Otsuka tracked him down once again. He informed Musashi that he was completely surrounded. 100 fully armed police officers were ready to arrest him. Otsuka urged Musashi to make the wise choice. Musashi gave the same answer as always. If they wanted to arrest him, they were welcome to try. Otsuka issued one final warning after witnessing Musashi's strength firsthand. Then he slowly drew his handgun. He believed the distance guaranteed a successful shot. Musashi calmly asked Otsuka to tell him his full name once again. Meanwhile, the 100 officers waited for the order to advance. Moments later, the command was given. The police surrounded Musashi from every direction. Musashi tossed Otsuka's handgun back toward him. But before it reached him, it was sliced cleanly in half. Musashi declared that the duel had been perfectly fair. Although Otsuka had attacked first, Musashi chose not to complain. In the next instant, Otsuka himself was cut cleanly in two. Musashi made it clear that he had no intention of surrendering. Nor would he obey anyone's orders. He calmly waited to see what the police would do next. The duel between Musashi and Inspector Otsuka ended in an instant. Otsuka had placed far too much confidence in his handgun. He repeatedly ordered Musashi to throw down his sword and surrender. Musashi agreed to let Otsuka fire first. After the count of 3, Musashi moved faster. Otsuka was split cleanly into 2 pieces. The formation of 100 officers immediately prepared for combat. This time, they had equipped compressed rubber ammunition. Once fired, the projectiles would become as hard as stone. Musashi released his overwhelming killing intent and prepared for battle. The barrage of bullets began. Musashi sliced every incoming round in half. The officers stood frozen in disbelief. 3 bullets had been cut apart with a single slash. Musashi continued advancing. The police formation immediately scattered. They then deployed a weapon they believed Musashi could never cut: high-pressure water cannons. Yet Musashi effortlessly dodged the powerful streams. He quickly reached the water cannon truck. Then he leapt onto it and drew his sword. With one downward slash, he cut straight through the powerful jet of water. The officers realized he had actually split the water stream itself in 2. Musashi calmly asked why no one was trying to arrest him anymore. He believed they had already understood the truth. No matter what they tried, they simply had no chance of defeating him. The police captain admitted that Musashi's swordsmanship was truly unrivaled. Even so, they remained confident in their equipment. After all, their gear far surpassed anything from the Warring States era. They also outnumbered Musashi by an overwhelming margin. The captain believed Musashi had absolutely no chance against such overwhelming reality. Musashi calmly replied that although there were many officers, none of them dared to move. He listed countless reasons why the police were too afraid to advance. Musashi gradually began to lose his patience. The captain then drew a stun gun. He fired it directly into Musashi's body. A stun gun was designed to incapacitate its target. It could pierce thick clothing and deliver 50,000 volts of electricity. The electric current would continue flowing to subdue the opponent. This particular stun gun had even been specially modified for Musashi. Its voltage had been increased to 500,000 volts. Musashi remained standing motionless for a brief moment. Then he finally collapsed. The captain refused to stop shocking him. The other officers quickly tried to stop their commander. Before long, everyone believed Musashi had truly died. To everyone's shock, Musashi suddenly stood back up. He had already learned that the captain's name was Awama. Musashi promised he would remember that name. Before Awama could fire the stun gun again, Musashi had already drawn his sword. He admitted it had been fascinating to experience such a powerful weapon for the first time. Awama was so terrified that he lost control of his bladder. Musashi decided he could not forgive such strange sorcery. One slash flashed through the air. This time, Awama's head fell to the ground. None of the remaining officers dared to approach. Not a single one had the courage to move forward. Their captain had just been executed by the legendary swordsman. Musashi looked up and admired the beautiful moon. The police couldn't believe he still had time to appreciate the scenery. Musashi smiled and said nights like this always made him want to cut someone. He declared that an army without its commander was no army at all. 100 leaderless soldiers possessed no collective strength. To Musashi, they were now nothing more than isolated individuals. Then he attacked once again. The police ballistic shields were sliced into countless tiny pieces. Musashi unexpectedly told the officers to clean up the bodies. He politely asked them to step aside. Then he walked away with complete confidence. Later that same day, the White House closed its doors to the media. The president-elect received highly classified information. The outgoing president personally briefed him. The United States had sworn a special oath to only one man, Yujiro Hanma. Both sides maintained a relationship of mutual respect and non-aggression. The president-elect couldn't understand why such an agreement even existed. He believed they simply needed to arrest Yujiro. The outgoing president explained that Yuhiro's bare-handed combat power rivaled the military strength of an entire nation. This unbelievable tradition had begun under the 40th president. Before leaving office, he offered one final piece of advice. Always yield to those who must be yielded to. 2 weeks later, another meeting took place. The president-elect wanted to put an end to this absurd arrangement. He personally went to meet Yujiro. But the moment he saw him, everything changed. Standing before him was a being beyond every weapon humanity possessed. Simply seeing Yuhiro's back answered every question he had. Yujiro announced that he intended to finish everything within 3 minutes. The president-elect immediately wet himself in terror. In the end, he swore the very same oath as his predecessors. Although it didn't go very smoothly. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hinari was escorted by Captain Stridham to meet Yujiro. She even brought a Bible with her. She was determined to save America from that monster. She boldly confronted Yujiro in person. Yet the moment she saw him, she was completely overwhelmed. She immediately asked permission to swear the oath again. She reminded Yujiro that she had been friends with Emi, his late wife. Yujiro agreed to protect her for Emi's sake. But he warned that if she swore carelessly again, he would personally violate that promise. Terrified by the threat, Mrs. Hinari chose to leave immediately. Elsewhere, Doppo continued his training. Baki and Katsumi watched him closely. The atmosphere was surprisingly cheerful. Doppo and Katsumi continued teasing each other. Afterwards, the three sat down together to chat. Their conversation soon turned to Musashi being hunted by the police. Doppo believed the police would pile up coffins like mountains if they challenged Musashi. Katsumi jokingly suggested Doppo should solve the problem himself. Doppo replied that he had already retired from such matters. Baki later returned home and reflected on himself. He wanted to train until he reached his absolute best condition again. Once everything was ready, Baki decided to challenge Musashi one more time. The Japanese Prime Minister also learned that Musashi had effortlessly sliced through police riot shields. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly remembered something. Tokugawa had once told him about creating an extraordinary human being. It turned out that unbelievable person truly existed. The Prime Minister immediately authorized the use of military force. The situation had already gone far beyond anyone's expectations. The scale of the disaster had become unimaginable. The police became determined to stop Musashi at all costs. Under no circumstances could the public begin worshipping him as a hero. Police forces were deployed nationwide. State-of-the-art armored anti-terror vehicles were mobilized. The elite SAT Tactical Assault Unit was also dispatched. Every force surrounded Musashi. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister met Tokugawa face to face. He believed Tokugawa had gone far too far this time. Musashi had not only been resurrected, he was also a cloned human being. If the truth became public worldwide, Japan would almost certainly face international isolation. Human cloning was considered an absolute taboo. Ethical principles, human rights, and morality all prohibited it. The entire world shared that belief. Tokugawa admitted he understood the situation from every perspective. He even gave permission for Musashi to be killed. The Prime Minister confirmed there had already been 2 victims. He refused to allow that number to increase. Tokugawa predicted many more people would die if things continued like this. Musashi looked at the forces before him. To him, they were finally worthy opponents. He decided to fight. The tactical units immediately moved into position. Every soldier prepared for combat. Then Musashi suddenly disappeared. Orders were given to shoot the instant he reappeared. But before anyone realized it, Musashi had already appeared behind the commanding officer. Musashi asked why they weren't shooting now that they could clearly see him. Then he struck. Another life was taken instantly. Musashi's massacre continued. He kept moving through the battlefield before vanishing once more. Hidden within the darkness, he appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Every appearance claimed another victim. The SAT unit could do nothing except fall into chaos. One officer after another was cut down. Musashi continued slashing without pause. He repeated the same deadly sequence again and again. 10 officers were killed on the spot. The survivors stood frozen in fear. At that moment, one man refused to break. It was Inspector Tanuma. He immediately assumed command. Tanuma ordered everyone to reorganize their formation. The armored vehicles and SAT units quickly regrouped. Musashi simply laughed and called them fools. He declared that he would simply disappear again, then return, and cut them down once more. Another slash flashed through the battlefield. Tanuma was instantly split in half and killed. Once again, the SAT unit lost its leader. The entire formation collapsed into confusion. Musashi then drew both of his swords. He was the creator of this legendary style himself. It was known as Niton Ichi Ryu. Despite the SAT's modern weapons and cutting-edge technology, their enemies still hadn't suffered even a single scratch. Every SAT member could almost see the legendary image of Musashi standing before them. Musashi ordered everyone not to move. Anyone who disobeyed would lose their head immediately. He calmly asked one final question. "Who is your commander now?" Silence filled the battlefield as every officer looked at one another. Both of their previous commanders had been cut in half the moment they stepped forward. Musashi realized there was no leader left. He ordered everyone to retreat immediately. Anyone who remained would be cut down without exception. The entire force withdrew at once without a single objection. The following day, another emergency meeting was convened. The Prime Minister couldn't believe the SAT unit had accomplished absolutely nothing against Musashi. He once again warned that if the cloning project were exposed to the world, the consequences would be disastrous. Every senior leader in the country attended the meeting. The Prime Minister believed creating Musashi was equivalent to creating a second Yujiro Hanma. Tokugawa was also present. The Prime Minister refused to deploy the self-defense forces. That would make it appear as though the government was waging war against a single individual. He wanted the incident resolved quietly, as if it were nothing more than a minor case. Police Commissioner Utsumi then mentioned one particular man, a fighter blessed with unmatched physical strength. Someone whose toughness made him capable of enduring Musashi's sword strikes. The only problem was that he belonged to the Yakuza. Tokugawa had no idea who Utsumi was referring to. Everyone else was equally puzzled. That man was Kaoru Hanayama. Utsumi personally went to meet him. Even he was overwhelmed by Hanayama's intimidating presence. Hanayama was surprised that the nation's top police official had come to see him. Utsumi assured him this wouldn't be a bad deal. For the sake of Japan, he wanted Hanayama's help. Hanayama frowned at the way Utsumi had phrased it. He couldn't believe the country had reached the point of relying on the Yakuza. Utsumi immediately apologized for his poor choice of words. He explained that Musashi was unlike anyone they had ever faced. He wasn't a terrorist, nor was he mentally unstable. He resembled none of their previous enemies. To Utsumi, Musashi was simply a monster standing before humanity. He pleaded with Hanayama once again to lend his strength. Hanayama quietly told Utsumi to go home. The distance between their worlds was simply too great. It couldn't be bridged overnight. Utsumi admitted his request had probably been too sudden. He prepared to leave. Before departing, he shared one last story. The officer Musashi had killed was Inspector Otsuka. Otsuka had been his academy classmate. Utsumi wanted to avenge his friend with his own hands. But he had failed completely. The bodies of his fellow officers continued piling up. He felt utterly ashamed of his own helplessness. Utsumi was about to bow and beg Hanayama. Hanayama immediately stopped him. He refused to let the nation's police commissioner lower himself like that. By then, Hanayama fully understood the situation. Later, Kazaki visited Tokugawa. He came to inform him about his boss's decision. Tokugawa admitted Hanayama's willingness to accept the challenge was admirable. But this opponent was unlike anyone before. Knowing Kazaki was an educated man, Tokugawa asked whether he understood human cloning. Kazaki had already guessed that Musashi was a clone. Tokugawa confirmed that Musashi was the genuine article. He also knew Kazaki was skilled with knives. But Musashi existed on an entirely different level. Kazaki became curious about Musashi's swordsmanship. Tokugawa reminded him that Retsu had died because of that very sword. Hanayama later learned everything from his subordinates. Kazaki admitted this battle would be completely different from anything before. Hanayama clenched his fist until it bled. He wanted to know exactly where Musashi was. At that very moment, Musashi was heading toward Shinjuku. Coincidentally, that was Hanayama's territory. Hanayama decided to give him a proper welcome. The story then shifted back to February of Genna Year 2. This was an old legend passed down throughout Musashino. Long ago, a wandering gambler sought shelter for the night. A wealthy farming family named Hanayama welcomed him with great hospitality. They warmly cared for the weary traveler. But tragedy struck that very night. More than 10 bandits stormed the Hanayama household. The family of 5 was brutally slaughtered. Only the eldest son, Yukichi, survived. Realizing he couldn't protect the child alone, the gambler carried Yukichi on his back and fled. The bandits chased after them relentlessly. He reached the temple bell and used it to shield the boy. Then he stood alone before the murderous gang. Forced to hold the massive bell, he endured countless sword wounds. The number of cuts and stab wounds soon exceeded 10. Even after dying, his body remained standing like a shield. The bandits admired his courage before leaving. Many years later, Yukichi had grown into a man. After learning the truth about his past, he eventually became a gambler himself. To honor the traveler who had saved his life, he tattooed the hero's image across his back. From then on, every head of the Hanayama family inherited the same tattoo. It became known as the legendary Atokodachi. However, Kaoru Hanayama questioned that tradition. He would become the 16th head of the Hanayama family. To him, an Atokodachi without sword scars wasn't a true Atokodachi. So he single-handedly attacked the rival Tamazawa gang. He wiped them all out in less than 10 minutes. Although he suffered devastating injuries, those sword wounds were exactly what he had been seeking. At the time, Hanayama was only 14 years old. Despite being slashed all over, he never fell. That was the moment the true Atokodachi was born. Even now, Kazaki remained deeply worried about his boss. Musashi was truly a terrifying opponent. Hanayama dismissed him as nothing more than a samurai from an old movie. Kazaki reminded him that everything he knew came only from fiction. This time, he would be facing a real samurai. A legendary swordsman from the Warring States era. Hanayama told his subordinate to stay calm. Victory required understanding and discipline. He firmly believed that anyone feared by the police and capable of killing Retsu had to be incredibly powerful. For Hanayama, that information alone was enough. Learning anything more would only cloud his mind. He wanted to face his opponent with complete purity. Kazaki understood that this was the path Hanayama had always followed. That was why he had remained by his boss's side all these years. To Hanayama, the identity of the enemy was never what mattered. What mattered was winning honorably. Face to face, the story then moved to Kabukicho Ichiban Street. Local police reported Musashi's exact location. At last, the two warriors met. Musashi found the district rather interesting. Hanayama removed his coat, revealing the legendary family tattoo across his back. The police could do nothing but watch. Musashi admitted Hanayama had an impressive presence. At that moment, Hanayama saw no one except Musashi. He quietly assumed his fighting stance. It resembled the posture of someone preparing to throw a punch. Without the slightest hesitation, Hanayama stepped directly into Musashi's killing range. Meanwhile, The police could only pretend they were merely observing the unusual situation. When Musashi looked at Hanayama, all he saw was pure white. He found it incredibly strange. When he looked at Baki, he saw a magnificent feast stretching to the horizon. When he looked at Yuhiro, he saw a mountain of gold reaching the heavens. When he looked at Pickle, he saw dazzling treasure and endless admiration. When he looked at Shibukawa, he saw a beautiful field of flowers that filled his heart with joy. Musashi wondered if Hanayama represented absolute emptiness. But someone so young couldn't possibly have reached such a state. Hanayama suddenly changed his stance. Musashi saw no defensive purpose in that posture. He couldn't understand what Hanayama intended to do once the sword came down. Hanayama shifted his stance once again. At that moment, Musashi finally understood. Hanayama was unbelievably pure. His courage was astonishing. Hanayama's spirit shone so brilliantly that it blinded Musashi. Musashi instinctively closed his eyes. That hesitation cost him dearly. Hanayama's fist landed cleanly. Musashi was launched through the air. After rolling several times, he crashed onto the ground. Everyone watching thought the fight had ended with a single punch. Musashi admitted that punch carried the will of a true sword. Its power had exceeded all of his expectations. Hanayama grabbed Musashi with one hand. He calmly asked whether Musashi could still fight. Musashi found the question rather amusing. He called Hanayama far too soft-hearted. Hanayama answered with another devastating punch. This time, Musashi blocked it with his sword. Although the blade split Hanayama's fist, the impact still rattled Musashi's entire body. Hanayama attacked once again. Musashi took a third punch head-on. He was blasted backward and collapsed once more. Utsumi and Tokugawa both nodded in admiration. This was exactly who Hanayama was. A man who existed to let swords pierce his body. Musashi's blade remained lodged inside Hanayama's fist. Musashi couldn't hide his excitement at such incredible strength. He quickly stood back up. Musashi asked Hanayama to wait for a moment. He assumed Hanayama already knew who he was. So Musashi wanted Hanayama to introduce himself properly. Hanayama apologized for the surprise attack. Then he calmly stated his name. He explained that he held no personal grudge against Musashi. But duty demanded that he bring him down. Musashi immediately rejected the idea. Thanks to Hanayama's innocent decision to stop and introduce himself, Musashi had completely recovered. Musashi couldn't understand what Hanayama was thinking. Hesitating any longer would only get him killed. The instant the conversation ended, Hanayama threw another punch. Musashi intercepted it with his sword. For a brief moment, he thought his blade had sliced straight through Hanayama's arm. But when he looked again, there wasn't a trace. Musashi dodged the next attack. He couldn't believe human flesh could become as tough as steel. Musashi drew his second sword and slashed across Hanayama's back. He wanted to know what it felt like to cut through an iron body. This time, Hanayama was finally wounded. Musashi had expected to split him in two with a single slash. Instead, Hanayama remained standing. Even his bones were completely unharmed. Musashi compared him to a muscular fortress sturdier than a charging bull. Then something even more unbelievable happened. Hanayama handed Musashi's sword back to him. He politely apologized for holding onto it for so long. Since it was useless to him, he decided to return it. Musashi admitted Hanayama was an incredibly troublesome opponent. Everyone watching agreed. That was exactly who Hanayama was. Musashi refused to take the sword back. He believed that once it had fallen into Hanayama's hands during battle, it rightfully belonged to him. Kazaki refused to let his boss be looked down upon. Hanayama pulled the sword from his own hand. Then he threw it directly toward Musashi. Musashi caught it effortlessly. Everyone was amazed he could catch it from that distance. Musashi praised Hanayama for being so considerate. This made accepting the sword much easier. Blood continued pouring from Hanayama's back. Tokugawa asked Utsumi what he thought of the battle. Utsumi admitted he wasn't sure whether this had been the right decision. But he sincerely appreciated everything Hanayama had done. Hanayama charged forward once again. By now, Musashi fully understood how terrifying his strength truly was. He refused to let another punch connect. Hanayama's attack narrowly missed. Musashi immediately drew his sword again. More deep slashes appeared across Hanayama's back. Everyone realized the situation had become extremely dangerous. Hanayama had suffered far too many wounds. Blood flowed endlessly down his back. Hanayama calmly admitted that it really hurt. Musashi was genuinely surprised to hear those words. He had devoted his entire life to the sword. Yet Hanayama was the first man to actually say it hurt after being cut by him. Everyone else had died before they could even speak. Musashi sincerely praised Hanayama for that. Hanayama walked directly toward Musashi. The two men locked hands. Everyone recognized it as a test of grip strength. Musashi wondered whether this was some custom of the modern era. After all, Pickle had challenged him the same way before. Both men prepared for a contest of pure strength. One possessed a grip capable of bending a 500 yen coin. The other could crush fresh bamboo with his bare hands. Hanayama declared that this was enough. Musashi looked confused. Hanayama calmly replied that Musashi was already in the palm of his hand. Then Hanayama squeezed first. An unbelievable crushing force erupted. His free hand immediately clamped onto Musashi's head. Everyone recognized the technique. It was the legendary Iron Claw. The move had been famous from 1966 to 1975. It was the signature finishing move of heavyweight champion Von Erich. Its crushing force exceeded 130 kilograms. However, the technique had disappeared for decades. It survived only in professional wrestling. Yet Hanayama was using it in a real fight. His overwhelming muscle power completely dominated Musashi. That crushing grip threatened to shatter Musashi's skull. Everyone watching believed Hanayama was about to win. They were convinced wrestling would defeat swordsmanship. Musashi refused to allow that outcome. Suddenly, a deafening explosion echoed across the battlefield. For a moment, everyone thought it was a terrorist attack. Hanayama remained standing. Musashi admitted it would be a terrible waste to kill such a man. Even so, he had already delivered another slash. Musashi acknowledged Hanayama as an exceptionally rare warrior. A massive wound now stretched across Hanayama's abdomen. Blood continued pouring from the deep cut. Musashi believed wrapping the sarashi around his body was the right decision. Without it, Hanayama's organs would have spilled out, and the fight would have ended instantly. By this point, everyone wanted the battle to end. They had seen enough. Even the police were preparing to intervene as the situation had become too dangerous. But Musashi had already defeated the entire SWAT team with ease. To a monster like him, firearms were completely useless. Despite everything, Hanayama managed to stand back up. Musashi calmly asked whether he could still continue fighting. Tokugawa believed the outcome had already been decided. Utsumi also felt that enough was enough. Kazaki hurried over with a fresh towel for his boss. He asked for permission to wrap Hanayama's wounds again. Kazaki immediately got to work. He tightened the cloth with every ounce of strength he had. At last, the bleeding finally began to stop. Just then, Baki arrived. He said the wrapping was good. But it needed one more thing: it had to be soaked. Everyone was surprised to see Baki appear. Baki explained the true purpose of wearing a sarashi in battle. First, it protects the abdomen from inexperienced swordsmen. Second, it helps stop bleeding and prevents the organs from spilling out after being slashed. Baki asked Hanayama to raise his arms. He said he knew a way to tighten the wrapping even further. Then Baki began spraying sake onto the cloth. The crowd saw it as a noble act of support. Hanayama joked that he'd rather drink the sake than have it sprayed on him. Baki laughed and said that could wait until later. Musashi wondered how much longer the two planned to chat. Baki looked at him and guessed he wasn't in peak condition anymore. He believed just one more decisive strike would finish the fight. In Baki's eyes, the battle had finally become evenly matched. The showdown between Musashi and Hanayama resumed once again. Musashi declared that the battle had reached its climax. Yet Hanayama's eyes remained as calm as those of a Buddha. Musashi realized Hanayama had risen above hatred itself. Both Kazaki and Baki sensed this would be the final exchange. Musashi swore he could no longer afford even the slightest mistake. This time, he drew both of his swords. The image of the legendary painting flashed through his mind once again. Musashi became completely exhilarated. Hanayama quietly returned to his fighting stance. This time, however, Musashi made the first move. He declared that this was no longer a contest of strength. It had become a true duel. Hanayama threw another punch, but Musashi's blade struck before the punch could even land. Even so, both fighters launched their attacks at the same time. Musashi slashed directly across Hanayama's face and eye. He followed it with another slash across Hanayama's back. Musashi realized he had unleashed a total of 10 slashes. Yet aside from the wound to Hanayama's abdomen, none of them had truly reached their intended target. Hanayama slowly dropped to one knee. Utsumi walked over and stood before him. Everyone was shocked to see the police commissioner personally approach Hanayama. Hanayama apologized for failing to keep the promise he had made. Utsumi replied that he was the one who had broken his promise because they never got to share that drink. He told Hanayama that he had fulfilled his promise far beyond anyone's expectations. Utsumi bowed deeply and thanked him once again. But Hanayama didn't feel he deserved such gratitude. Everyone silently watched the emotional moment unfold. Hanayama admitted that Musashi was an undefeated samurai, a truly overwhelming warrior. He accepted that he was no match for him. He asked Utsumi to forgive him. Utsumi playfully deceived Hanayama for a brief moment. Then he bowed once again and sincerely thanked him. Musashi reflected on all the things he had cut in half throughout his life. There had never been anything beyond his blade. Yet he never imagined someone like Hanayama could exist in such a vast world. Hanayama continued exposing his completely defenseless back. It was his way of accepting defeat with dignity. Musashi believed Hanayama's fortress of muscles was protected by an even stronger fortress of bones. He stepped forward, intending to deliver the final slash. His target was Hanayama's skull. But Baki suddenly stepped in between them. Baki declared that if Musashi drew his sword again, he would kill him on the spot. Musashi questioned how the fight could already be over. To him, a battle wasn't finished until the final cut had been made. Baki firmly replied that it was already over. Musashi still refused to accept that conclusion. Baki reminded him that this was no longer the age of samurai wandering the land with swords. In this era, the fight ended here. Hanayama thanked Baki for stepping in. Baki praised him for fighting brilliantly. Then he gently asked Hanayama to finally let himself fall. Only then did everyone realize Baki was truly the son of the ogre. Hanayama asked whether the Tokodachi tattoo on his back was still standing proudly. Baki smiled and said anyone could see it standing tall. He even said it looked more magnificent than ever before. Hanayama laughed, saying everyone was lying to him tonight. With those words, he finally collapsed. Utsumi immediately ordered every police officer to assemble. The entire force had been hiding nearby all along. He ordered Hanayama to be taken to the hospital immediately. He refused to let Hanayama die. Hanayama was rushed to the hospital under heavy escort. Baki admitted that Hanayama truly lived up to his reputation. The ground was completely covered in blood. Baki blamed every drop of it on Musashi. He declared that he was ready to erase Musashi from this world. Musashi asked if Baki truly intended to kill him. Baki answered that this world no longer belonged to Musashi. Musashi admitted he understood that perfectly well. After all, this wasn't a world where people advanced by killing others. Baki couldn't believe Musashi understood that and still kept cutting people down. Musashi asked whether Baki was seeking revenge. Baki admitted that he probably was. Musashi gladly accepted the challenge. But Baki refused to fight a completely exhausted opponent. Musashi swung his sword once again. Baki said that under normal circumstances, that strike would have split him in two. But the current Musashi was no longer at his best. He had grown so weak that he couldn't even cut down someone like Baki anymore. Musashi found that statement fascinating. He swung his blade once again. This time, Baki's shirt was sliced cleanly in half. Baki thanked Musashi for holding back. Musashi repeated that he would patiently wait for Baki to come and take his life. Tokugawa finally stepped forward. He asked Musashi to return with him. Everyone then followed Musashi as they left. Meanwhile, Hanayama underwent emergency treatment at the hospital. He required enough blood transfusions to fill an entire bathtub. He had suffered 10 deep sword wounds in total. Kureha stitched more than 1,000 sutures to save his life. Tokugawa said that was exactly what he expected from Hanayama. He also informed Kureha that Baki had officially declared war on Musashi. Kureha wasn't surprised, but he questioned whether weapons would be allowed. Tokugawa admitted he hadn't made a final decision yet. However, Musashi was a samurai, so fighting without his swords was impossible. Kureha agreed that Musashi's true power with a sword was beyond question. Even so, Baki had chosen to confront him completely barehanded. Tokugawa explained that it wasn't just a challenge. Baki had declared that he would erase Musashi from this world. He also told Kureha that Baki had said it directly to Musashi's face. Kureha admitted that it didn't sound like Baki at all. Tokugawa agreed, it wasn't like Baki to talk so boldly. But he believed Baki wasn't the type to make empty threats. Meanwhile, Baki continued walking alone, reflecting on himself. He realized he had been taking it easy for a long time. He knew Musashi didn't spend every day training either. Musashi simply lived his life as usual. Baki concluded that put them on equal footing. Even without training, his body continued to evolve. Every part of his body had naturally grown stronger. His body was always in a constant state of combat readiness. If someone suddenly attacked him, merely imagining the attack was enough for his body to react instantly. A passing couple even felt as if the upper half of Baki's body had vanished. Baki imagined himself being surrounded by enemies. His body would automatically move with maximum efficiency to evade every attack. This time, the couple felt as though Baki had disappeared completely. Afterward, Baki visited Kosho. Kosho demonstrated a technique using a basketball. He sliced it apart with nothing but his hands and feet. The technique was called Kenbatsu Zan. It wasn't a sword technique. Instead, he asked Baki why human limbs could produce cutting power. Baki understood that it came from mastering the extremities of the body. Kosho clarified that he specifically meant everything beyond the wrists and ankles. This technique was completely different from ordinary punches and kicks. Using the bare extremities created countless possibilities. Kosho admitted he was worried about Baki facing Musashi unarmed. He continued explaining the hidden potential of the human body. A body that could imitate nearly every type of weapon was truly terrifying. As an example, he imagined Baki traveling on an airplane. If Baki wanted to hijack it, succeeding would be incredibly easy. Kosho believed Baki's body had already reached that level. Elsewhere, Tokugawa asked Musashi about Hanayama. Musashi quietly reflected on the battle. He admitted Hanayama was something he couldn't truly cut down. People, trees, rocks, and even steel had always been easy targets. He once believed nothing existed beyond his blade. But Hanayama had proven otherwise. Musashi couldn't bring him down. Hanayama's fortress-like muscles surpassed even the finest armor. Flesh itself could still be cut. But Hanayama's will, determination, and spirit, those were the things that had pushed Musashi's blade back. Musashi assumed that answer would satisfy Tokugawa. Instead, Tokugawa revealed that Baki was even stronger than Hanayama. Hanayama simply wasn't Baki's equal. That was an undeniable fact. Musashi calmly replied that he already knew Baki was stronger. Tokugawa was slightly surprised by that answer. After all, Musashi had defeated Baki once before. Tokugawa thought that alone proved his point. Musashi disagreed completely. He didn't consider that encounter a real fight. He had merely exploited Baki's inexperience and manipulated him psychologically. That prevented Baki from displaying his true strength. Therefore, it couldn't be called a genuine battle. Tokugawa smiled and said that meant Baki still couldn't be saved. He believed Baki would never allow anyone to erase his own defeat. Baki accepted every outcome. Defeating your opponent meant victory. Being defeated meant defeat. To Baki, it was that simple. Musashi had won once, so it was still a victory. However, Musashi insisted that in a true fight, Baki would never lose so easily. Tokugawa then had one final thing to tell Musashi. The only person on Earth to defeat the world's strongest creature, Yujiro Hanma, was Baki. Only then did Musashi remember that endless banquet. He smiled and called it a truly auspicious encounter. A most fortunate battle awaited him. Musashi urged Tokugawa to make the preparations immediately. Meanwhile, Baki trained harder than ever. One punch from Baki didn't damage the front of the heavy bag. Instead, the glue on the back peeled apart from the impact. Kosho was stunned by what he witnessed. He believed even Musashi wouldn't remain standing after taking that punch. But Baki calmly said he wasn't trying to defeat Musashi. He intended to kill him. Once again, Kosho felt those words didn't sound like Baki at all. Baki simply replied that perhaps he had always been a quiet person. Kosho suddenly realized those words sounded exactly like Doppo's. They were the same words Doppo had spoken before and after facing Musashi. Kosho believed Baki meant every word. Baki was determined to erase Musashi from existence forever. He politely thanked everyone and bowed. Then he quietly left. As he walked away, Baki repeated that Musashi should never have existed in this era. Meanwhile, Musashi descended into the city's underground sewer system. The police quickly discovered his location and reported it. Along the way, Musashi caught a snake with his bare hands. He skinned it and ate it on the spot. He admitted that food was never in short supply here. Eventually, he arrived at a massive pile of bones. There, Pickle appeared before him. Musashi remarked that Pickle had grown even larger. He believed Pickle ranked one level above Hanayama. Musashi said he had simply come to meet him. The police also knew this was Pickle's territory. Musashi and Pickle quietly sat down together. Musashi guessed that Pickle had eaten everything, leaving only the bones behind. He was amazed that Pickle ate raw meat without using fire. Nothing remained except the skeletons. No wonder Pickle possessed such unbelievable strength. Suddenly, Pickle offered Musashi a strange liquid to drink. Musashi accepted without hesitation. After tasting it, he realized it was brain fluid. To his surprise, he found it delicious. Pickle offered him even more. Musashi gladly accepted the gift. However, he said he would rather roast it before eating. Even though Pickle couldn't speak, Musashi had come to have a conversation with him. Tokugawa had told him that Pickle shared a similar fate. Both of them had come from an age long lost to history. After meeting Pickle, Musashi finally understood. Even without words, the two could still communicate. Musashi politely excused himself and departed. Soon afterward, he returned to the surface. The police accused him of causing another disturbance. Musashi asked what disturbance they were talking about. He insisted he had merely been taking a walk. With only a few words and a subtle gesture, Musashi frightened one police officer so badly that he lost control of his bladder. Musashi then calmly walked away once again. Meanwhile, Baki went to visit Shibukawa. Shibukawa was delighted after hearing about Baki's decision. He gave Baki his full support. The two exchanged several techniques. But Baki reacted perfectly to every single move Shibukawa used. At last, the arena was fully prepared. Baki stepped forward, ready to enter the battlefield. The atmosphere inside the arena was already reaching a fever pitch. Musashi was already waiting inside the arena. He was visibly irritated after having to wait for such a long time. This time, he noticed that the feast before him had been completely devoured. Musashi grew angry because Baki had eaten every last bit of food. Returning to the moment before Baki entered the arena, two swords had already been placed at the center of the stage. Every great master had gathered in the stands. They had all come to support Baki. Gaia arrived alongside his master, Motobi. Everyone was prepared to witness the final battle to the death. Musashi then appeared. Even Oliva was overwhelmed the moment he saw him. The reality of Musashi far exceeded all the rumors. It was hard to believe such a man could truly exist. Everyone realized Musashi had entered the arena early. No one knew what he was planning. Musashi walked to the center and sat down to meditate. A short while later, Baki finally appeared. Returning to the moment the two faced each other, Musashi was furious that his feast had been eaten clean, leaving nothing behind. The ruined scene before him reminded him of the aftermath of the Battle of Sekigahara. Baki, however, wondered what exactly Musashi was talking about. Musashi declared that he could no longer enjoy the feast. To him, Baki was no longer the feast itself. Baki still had no idea what Musashi meant. Musashi stated that whatever he was about to do, and whatever result followed, would not change. He intended to drink every last drop of Baki's blood. The referee began explaining the rules of the match. Weapons were allowed, except for firearms. The two swords in the center could be used freely. Tokugawa also addressed both fighters, since this was the match that would determine the winner. He wanted fairness above all else. Baki laughed. He said the announcement was unnecessary. Musashi was the greatest dirty fighter in history. No matter how strict the rules were, Musashi would trample over fairness itself. Musashi told Tokugawa not to meddle in unnecessary matters. He said Baki understood the situation better than Tokugawa did. Before Baki's eyes, the arena appeared like a vast palace. Both fighters took their positions. Baki thought the cream-colored palace looked sickeningly sweet. Both sides were ready. The final death match between Baki and Musashi officially began. Baki resolved to unleash all of his power. He would use everything he had. Tokugawa officially started the match. The entire arena erupted with excitement. Musashi's terrifying aura filled the stadium. Oliva could clearly sense Musashi's overwhelming power. In Musashi's hands were two invisible swords. Already prepared, everyone watching was astonished by Musashi. Baki didn't expect Musashi to already be holding them. Musashi grew irritated by what he saw as Baki's arrogance. Baki replied that no one was underestimating him just because he was unarmed. But Baki also believed Musashi was not an opponent who couldn't be dealt with. Baki launched a kick, but it missed. Musashi received a small cut on his face. At the same time, Musashi slashed Baki's leg. Baki fell to the ground and realized he had been cut. Musashi kicked Baki directly in the face. Baki flipped through the air, preventing himself from collapsing completely. Musashi recalled their previous battle. Compared to that time, Baki had improved tremendously. Musashi also mentioned Baki's battle with Yujiro. He remembered being struck painfully in the groin during that fight. Musashi knew Baki had once defeated Yujiro. Baki replied that he did not acknowledge that victory. Musashi mocked him, saying Baki was trying to look cool by denying it. Musashi then said they had talked enough. The battle resumed. Musashi attacked first. He spun, lowered his center of gravity, and charged straight at Baki. But when he looked again, Baki had vanished. Baki successfully landed a punch on Musashi. Musashi collapsed to the ground from the unseen strike. Everyone realized Musashi had taken 3 attacks from Baki. It was a lightning-fast 3-hit combination. So fast that it looked like a single blow. Baki's punch was a 3-level combination: high, middle, and low. It struck 3 different parts of Musashi's body. Combined with the cockroach dash and Baki's maximum speed, Musashi had no chance to close the distance. The first strike dug deeply into Musashi's forehead. Everyone could only praise Baki's brilliance. He controlled the tips of his limbs with incredible precision. This was a technique that had never existed in the Sengoku era. Musashi lay on the ground in pain. Then he stood back up. He admitted that while he was down, Baki could have killed him several times, but chose not to. Baki replied that he wasn't willing to take that risk. He wanted to kill Musashi while Musashi was moving. Musashi thanked Baki. He explained that because Baki struck from top to bottom, he survived. If the attack had gone from bottom to top, Musashi would have been finished. Baki continued moving and attacking. This time, Musashi dodged and countered. Musashi had finally seen through the attack. He wanted the battle to transition into grappling range. Musashi praised Baki once again. Even without acceleration, Baki could move at terrifying speed. Musashi knew Baki had to relax his body to the absolute limit to achieve that speed. Baki noted that Musashi had now learned to counter it. Musashi replied that he had been on guard from the beginning, yet he still took all 3 hits. Musashi declared that from now on, the battle would become a contest of reading each other. Baki advanced again. He attacked Musashi once more. The audience couldn't understand what had just happened. Baki realized Musashi had definitely seen it. Musashi said it was finally time to truly enter the battle. He drew out his 2 invisible swords. This time, they appeared even clearer than before. Baki could see the steel grain and the reflection of light. Musashi was ready to do whatever it took. Baki attacked first again. Musashi slashed, and Baki recognized the cut. The spectators still couldn't understand what had happened. It was a slash delivered from virtually 0 distance. Yet Musashi was still able to cut him. Even though Baki hadn't received a physical sword wound, he realized he had been cut. Musashi followed up with a knee strike to Baki's groin. Baki was overcome with pain. Musashi prepared to slash again. Baki recognized the attack, but he couldn't do anything about it. In his mind, he saw himself being cut into many pieces. Then Musashi delivered a powerful body blow. Baki took the full impact and collapsed beside the arena. At that moment, everyone had to admit it. Never underestimate Musashi just because he's unarmed. He is capable of turning anything into a weapon. The two continued their intense battle of reading each other's intentions. Baki charged forward and grabbed Musashi. This time, he drove a knee toward Musashi's face. But before it could land, Musashi effortlessly neutralized the attack. Even so, Baki managed to stay on his feet. The mind game between them continued. Baki attacked once again. Musashi countered immediately and knocked him to the ground. As Baki fell, memories of the past flashed through his mind. Everyone watching realized Musashi was on an entirely different level. Motobi wasn't surprised at all. He believed Baki had taken Musashi's bait, even though Baki had read Musashi's brain signals. The moment he acted, Musashi had already moved one step ahead. Those brain signals had been nothing more than bait. The instant Baki made contact, the trap was already complete. Gaia concluded that Baki simply couldn't win. The spectators could only continue praising Musashi. His strength was truly overwhelming. Shibukawa remembered the night before Motobi fought Musashi. Motobi had prepared more seriously than ever before. Yet everyone already knew how that battle ended. Motobi also knew that no modern martial artist trained harder than Baki. Suddenly, Baki tossed a real sword to Musashi. Then Baki picked up another sword himself. He explained that he was imitating Musashi. After all, swordsmanship was Musashi's domain. Baki believed killing him without a real sword would be too cruel. Everyone was shocked to hear Baki openly talk about killing Musashi. Musashi laughed, saying Baki had truly lost his mind. He questioned who would actually kill whom. Baki calmly replied that he had come to say goodbye forever. Musashi declared that such a thing would never happen. He would continue living and carving his way to the top of this country. Baki called those words a lie. This wasn't a world where people climbed to the top by killing others. Baki believed Musashi had realized that long ago. Once again, Baki declared that Musashi didn't belong in this world. Baki gripped the sword exactly as Musashi would. He poured strength into the blade and threw it toward Musashi. Once again, Musashi caught the sword effortlessly. Baki immediately rushed forward. He knew Musashi would catch it. That was exactly what he wanted. Now both of Musashi's hands were occupied. Baki's kick landed cleanly, sending Musashi crashing to the ground once again. The sword returned to Baki's hand. Baki believed it was finally time to end everything. He shouted that he was about to stab Musashi. Musashi slowly regained consciousness. Baki had already hidden the sword behind his back. He calmly told Musashi that the battle was over. Musashi was surprised to realize both swords had left his hands. Baki admitted that if Musashi had still been holding them, he would have been sliced to pieces. For the first time, Baki completely controlled the flow of the battle. He intended to bury Musashi once and for all. Musashi believed Baki couldn't truly kill someone while holding a sword. Baki stood up in disbelief. He couldn't believe Musashi thought he didn't know how to use one. Without hesitation, Baki swung the sword. Then he followed with several more slashes. Musashi admitted that although Baki was still an amateur, he had already grasped many of the principles of the sword. Baki replied that he could slash even in his dreams. Everyone was surprised by how serious Baki had become about swordsmanship. Musashi explained that a sword could leave its owner's hand. He began speaking about the relationship between the warrior and the weapon. From the very beginning, the warrior and the sword had always been separate entities. Yet a true sword should never leave its wielder's hand. Musashi longed for a sword that could never be separated from him. He admitted that being separated from his blade was a lonely feeling. He called this ideal, no sword. An unarmed martial artist was someone who turned the body itself into a weapon. Unlike a sword, the body could never be separated from its owner. In the end, the path of the sword led to the path of no sword. Eventually, the weapon itself would no longer matter. Musashi declared that this was the path he intended to pursue. Baki replied that Musashi should walk that path in the afterlife. That path belonged to the Sengoku era where Musashi once ruled the battlefield. This world was not the place for it. Baki attacked once again. He continued fighting with the sword. Musashi caught the blade with both hands. Baki had already predicted he would do exactly that, because that response was simply the easiest option. Suddenly, Sabuko appeared and kissed Musashi. In that instant, Musashi lost consciousness. Everyone was left completely speechless. Musashi collapsed to the ground. Tokugawa immediately realized Musashi was truly gone. Sabuko began chanting an ancient incantation. She prayed for Musashi's soul to return to where it belonged. Then she breathed his spirit out from her mouth. Musashi officially returned to his own world. Outside, a massive police force had already surrounded the area. But Musashi was gone. Baki apologized to Sabuko for involving her. Sabuko accepted full responsibility herself. She admitted that she was the one who had summoned Musashi into this era. Without his arrival, countless tragedies would never have happened. Sabuko confessed that both she and Tokugawa deserved punishment 1,000 times over. Baki believed Musashi's appearance had excited everyone around him. And once that happened, the brutality of his sword could no longer be contained. Baki felt that everyone shared responsibility. This country had simply acted according to its own nature. And Musashi had done exactly the same. Everyone carried Musashi's body away together. The entire audience silently offered their prayers. Tokugawa reminded everyone that this was not a funeral. It was a farewell ceremony for the greatest swordsman in history. A legendary warrior from a bygone age. He asked everyone not to bow their heads in prayer. Instead, he wanted them to stand tall and send Musashi off as fellow warriors. Every martial arts master faced that moment without wavering. Musashi's body was returned to the laboratory. Every one of his vital signs remained completely normal. Naturally, there was no brain activity. Musashi's soul had truly returned to its own world. Tokugawa believed everything would finally be alright. Afterward, Musashi's body was placed into preservation. Nanamura explained that the container was filled with liquid nitrogen. The temperature would be lowered by 0.5 degrees every 6 hours. It would take 6 weeks to reach the final temperature of -196 degrees Celsius. This freezing method would preserve Musashi's cells without causing any damage. The solution being administered into Musashi's mouth was developed by Nanamura's team of scientists. It was delivered at a rate of 0.9 milligrams per minute. The solution would provide nutrients equivalent to 20,000 milliliters, sustaining Musashi's body for 15 days as it was gradually absorbed. Every cell in his body would continue absorbing nutrients and remain alive. In other words, this was a preservation fluid that caused no damage to living cells. Tokugawa worried that Musashi's blood might eventually clot. Nanamura explained that tubes inserted through the thigh were connected directly to the aorta and the vena cava. This allowed blood circulation to continue much more smoothly. By the beginning of the following week, the preservation solution would completely fill every blood vessel in Musashi's body. Tokugawa thanked everyone once again for their efforts. Nanamura insisted that something this precious had to be preserved. No matter how history judged Musashi in the modern era, Tokugawa also wanted Musashi to remain here. Soon afterward, every martial arts master gathered after learning that Musashi's body had been preserved. Nanamura carefully explained the entire preservation process once again. Tokugawa reminded everyone that Musashi would continue to remain here. Kureha believed this preservation method was intended for a possible resurrection in the future. Baki, however, saw it as eternal preservation. He said he wasn't speaking from personal feelings. Baki asked Tokugawa whether he planned to keep Musashi stored away forever, pulling him out whenever he pleased and sealing him away again afterward. Tokugawa firmly replied that Musashi was no longer alive. But at the same time, he wasn't truly dead either. His time had simply been frozen. The legendary swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi, was still here. Tokugawa believed that cremating him and giving him a normal burial would show no true respect. He refused to accept that outcome. Instead, he wanted to preserve Musashi's body as a home for his spirit. Tokugawa believed this was the greatest act of sincerity towards someone who had passed on. Even if Musashi never returned, that home would always remain. To Tokugawa, this was the truest form of remembrance. Everyone gathered to pay their respects to Musashi one final time. And with that, the story of the undefeated samurai finally came to an end. That wraps up all 12 episodes for today. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to look forward to the next series when it premieres. As always, thank you for all your support. And see you in the next video.